censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But bomb.
And action.
Sergeant read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 3 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. Now, any second we are going to go live to a police press conference following the inquest in the death of Nicola Bulley. That inquest found that she may well have died as quickly as 25 seconds after entering the water. Lancashire Police will be talking in a matter of moments. We will take that live. But in other news, Rwanda, is it value for money? It's emerged it might cost around 165 grand to deport someone. Yeah, OK, I think it is value for money because of the deterrent factor and because of the ongoing cost of actually keeping somebody here if we don't deport. In other news, I'm also going to be talking about this. I'm very energised about this story today, and I think a lot of you should be as well. In my view, cricket is just not institutionally racist or sexist. Despite what this ridiculous new report has to say, I will be getting stuck right into that with a whole host of top guests. In other news, we're also going to be going at this as well. 27 members of Just Stop Oil have been arrested. They've been herded up and carted off. Not before time. There was more instances of them lobbing whatever they call paint or whatever over a building in Canary Wharf, and as well protesting outside a hospital. I thought they weren't going to hold ambulances up. One more final one for you as well, which is this, isn't it? Yes, it is now just one day to go until I dance on stage with the Dream Boys. I had my final rehearsal today. I will be playing you clips of that very shortly. Loads on the agenda. Patrick Christys, GB News. GBviews at gbnews.com. Couple of big ones for you to email in on today. Is Rwanda value for money? That's the first one. And do you honestly think that cricket is institutionally racist and sexist? GBviews at gbnews.com. Headlines now.
Good afternoon from the GB Newsroom. I'm Tamsin Roberts. It's 2 minutes past 3. Well, let's just start with our breaking news this hour. The inquest into the death of Nicola Bulley has concluded the mother of two died from accidental drowning. The senior coroner, Dr James Adley, told the inquest Nicola fell into the cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Nicola Bulley disappeared in January whilst walking her dog along the River Wyre in Lancashire. Well, let's just go to Lancashire now for a live press conference where we can get an update on the recording of that inquest. OK, we'll come back to that. That hasn't started yet. We will come back to that as soon as we get sight of it starting. OK, other news now. The threat of more strikes by nurses in England has ended after a ballot on further industrial action failed to meet the legal threshold. The Royal College of Nursing says 84% of its members voted to back more strikes, but only 43% took part in the ballot, so it failed to reach the required 50%. The nurses started their industrial action towards the end of 2022 in a bitter dispute over pay. Health Minister Maria Caulfield says nurses agreed to a good pay deal.
Welcome the fact that that we did reach an agreement. That pay rise is going to be landing now in over 1 million NHS workers' pay packets this month, and that will make a real difference to them. So we welcome the news today that strike action is on hold for nurses.
Former Health Secretary Matt Hancock has concluded giving evidence to the COVID-19 inquiry. He said nothing can bring back the people who died, but that necessary measures need to be taken, and early, to stop a future pandemic from killing people. He said the system for running adult social care is flawed and was in nowhere near good enough shape when the pandemic hit in 2020. He also revealed the UK came within hours of running out of medicines for intensive care during the pandemic. He told the investigation he was wrong to think the UK was prepared for the pandemic.
The UK was one of the best placed countries in the world for responding to a pandemic, and indeed in some areas categorised by the World Health Organization as the best placed in the world. And you can understand that when you're assured by the leading global authority that the UK is the best prepared in the world, that is quite a significant reassurance. That turned out to be wrong.
Boris Johnson's actions in the lead-up to his Daily Mail job announcement show an urgent need to reform, according to a watchdog. The Advisory Committee on Business Appointments says the former Prime Minister told them about the new position only 30 minutes before he announced it on Twitter. But the rules state former ministers should neither announce nor take up jobs before receiving advice from the committee. Senior executives from Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's and Morrisons have been questioned by MPs over rising food prices. Food inflation has eased for a second month as supermarkets cut the price of some household staples, including milk, cheese and eggs. Figures from the British Retail Consortium show that shop price inflation overall slowed to 8.4% in June, down from 9% in May. GBNews reporter Will Hollis says bosses were asked about their profits.
Supermarket bosses took a lengthy grilling this morning from that cross-party of MPs on the business and trade.
OK, let's go to Preston now, where we can hear from
family
Lancashire.
to read a statement on their behalf. The last few months have been extremely tough to process for our family. The emotional impact will stay long in our hearts, and whilst we will never forget the loss of our Nikki, we will forever remember her as the brilliant mum, partner, daughter and sister that we all knew and loved so very much. The help and support we have received over these past few months has meant more than words can say. From family and friends to complete strangers, across the country and the world, thank you. Nikki and Paul's girls have already taken great comfort in a deeply thoughtful gift sent to them in goodwill, and in time they will read the many cards which are filled with such kindness and love. Sadly, we feel the need to again raise and address the issue of social media. It's upsetting that we've continued to receive negative targeted messages and still wildly inaccurate speculation being shared on numerous platforms. We encourage people to look at the facts, the evidence which is being heard during the inquest, and the conclusion reached by the coroner, to ignore any amateur views and opinions and be mindful of the impact words bring. We want to formally say thank you for the support and compassion showed by Lancashire Constabulary, His Majesty's Coroner, Dr. Aidley, his team, Sophie Cartwright KC of Dean's Court Chambers and Terry Wilcox of Hudgell Solicitors. We now need to be allowed time to comprehend all of the events leading up to this day. We ask that you all respect our privacy and this time to let us rebuild and take time to heal. Thank you.
want to start by saying that first and foremost, my thoughts today are with Nicky's family and loved ones. They have been through the most unimaginable months, and I can only hope that this inquest in some way will help by answering some of the questions that they had about what happened to Nicky on January the 27th, and will allow them to start the process of rebuilding their lives as best they can. I would like to thank Dr. Aidley for his careful consideration of the evidence presented at this inquest, and all of the witnesses for their participation. I hope that His Majesty's Coroner's clear and definitive findings will put an end to ill-informed speculation and conspiracy theories which have been so damaging to Nicky's family and the community of St Michael's. I would like to finish by bringing this back to Nicky. She was clearly a much-loved mum, partner, daughter, sister and friend, and I would once again like to express my deepest sympathy to all her loved ones. And I would ask that their privacy is respected at this time to allow them the time and space to rebuild and to heal. Thank you.
So that was the very, very brief press conference there from outside Preston County Court following the inquest into the death of Nicola Bulley, who went missing on January the 27th. There was that 3-week search, wasn't there? The verdict in that inquest, the ruling in that inquest, has been accidental death. They say there was no signs that Nicola was feeling in any way suicidal before the incident, and there were no traces of alcohol in her system. Clearly huge questions to be asked over Lancashire Police. You just heard their Detective Chief Superintendent Pauline Stables from Lancashire Police. You also heard a very moving statement from the family and the family's solicitor, Terry Cox, as well. So that is the latest from that 2-day inquest into the death of Nicola Bulley. Right, we've got loads of other stories on as well today. We are going to be discussing the Rwanda plan, whether it's value for money. We're also going to be talking about whether or not cricket is institutionally racist and sexist. I have very strong views on that. I've got a whole host of top guests on that. We'll be getting stuck into it. I don't buy this report whatsoever, and in fact, I find it quite offensive. We're also going to be talking about electric cars apparently causing more damage to the roads than normal vehicles. But we will crack on with the government's controversial plan to deport migrants to Rwanda, and the fact that it would cost more than keeping asylum seekers in the UK. But there is more than meets the eye to that stat, as I will go on to discuss. That's according to the government's own analysis. An economic impact report into the illegal migration bill says that deportations to a safe country could cost around £63,000 more per individual. The Home Office report found that sending an individual to Rwanda would cost about 170 grand. That's higher than the estimated £106,000 to process a migrant in the UK, which includes accommodation at around £85 per night and supporting them for an estimated 4 years, 4 years, while their asylum claim is processed. That is, as I said, an estimated 63 grand more to send a migrant to Rwanda. But last year, nearly 46,000 people crossed the Channel on boats. If the crossings continue to rise at the current rate, the report found that it would cost the UK £32 million a day by the end of 2026. To effectively break even, the plans would have to deter 37% of people from crossing the Channel. Now, the Home Office believes its Rwanda policy would help achieve that. Can I just suggest as well that what this report does not factor in is the ongoing costs of these people. So let's just say that somebody comes and they're processed here for around 106 grand. Well, that assumes that the hotel prices are going to stay the same and the accommodation prices are going to stay the same, which they are not. Can I also factor in maybe the cost of things like RAF Scampton? That local area has now missed out on a £300 million renovation project as a result of having an asylum seeker base there as well. What about the ongoing cost for finding these people social housing if they can't get a job? Have they got children? Would those children have to go to school? Will they have health issues? Will they have to use our NHS? It goes on and on and on. So for my money, anyway, if you'll excuse the pun, it will work out cheaper to send somebody to Rwanda than it would to deal with them here. Joining me now is Craig McKinley, Conservative MP for South Thanet. Thank you very much, Craig. Look, I do think that the overbearing headline, as it's been treated by the vast majority of our media, that Rwanda is far too expensive and would be better keeping them all here, putting them up in the Ritz and sending them to Eton, is a little bit disingenuous.
Yeah, completely. I mean, your introduction there, I think, covered the points quite well, because the whole idea about the Rwanda policy, I've never been a great fan of the Rwanda policy, but it's the only tool we've got left in the box. I mean, I've got a toolbox at home. I haven't got a great set, and you have to make things fit from time to time. The French haven't been stopping the beach launchings, as we've asked them to do, as we've paid them to do, with seemingly any amount of money they need. That hasn't actually stopped the flow, done some of it, of course. The whole idea about Rwanda is deterrence, so that, yes, the cost is high, 169,000 are the wooden dollar accounting that's been put forward today. If two of those are sent to Rwanda, but it deters 3, you're ahead of the game. We've actually saved money. But the reality is, Patrick, is that we are literally running out of hotels. And you could just imagine when we start having to put up marquee tents and all the rest of it, because there's no hotels left, you will have the same lawfare lawyers, the ambulance chasers, claiming human rights abuses against people who have been having to live under canvas, as it were, because there's nowhere else, and we'll be going right back to square one again. But you're quite right to add in what I call the capital cost of people coming to the UK. It's not just the revenue cost, i.e., they're putting them up in hotels. One point I have to make, why on earth does it take 4 years to process somebody? But we'll set that aside as an argument and a discussion point for another day. But yes, there is a capital cost. As you've got an increasing population, families come over, you've got education costs, health costs, housing costs, new roads and all the rest of it, which has to be built on the back of increased accommodations. And that is very rarely factored in, very rarely factored in. A report I read is that per person additional in the UK can cost up to another £250,000. So if the Rwanda stops and does the deterrent effect, and just putting myself into the minds of a potential migrant, the prospect of coming to the UK and then getting sent to Rwanda, or staying in France, Germany, Greece, or wherever else you've passed through, I think that may be more appealing.
I don't know about you, but I'm getting sick and tired of everybody saying no to everything. Oh, well, we can't possibly turn the boats back. That would be inhumane. Oh, we can't possibly keep them in detention centres. That would be inhumane. Oh, we can't possibly deport actual criminals to countries of their own origin because that would be inhumane. We'll let some of them stay and then kill people on the streets over here. Oh, we can't possibly send people to Rwanda. I mean, that's a ridiculous thing to do. All right, OK, well, what is your solution? Because at the moment, the solution is to make the British taxpayer pay for everything and share their resources with a load of people who, frankly, they don't know.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, we are pussyfooting around this debate. I've had enough of pussyfooting around this debate. I think the British people have had enough of pussyfooting around this debate. Now, I put forward a plan. You'll like this one, Patrick. I think we have about 60 Chinook helicopters in the UK. So let's assume they're not all working. We've probably got 50 of them. I would have them, one of them on the beach in Dungeness. So when the RNLI boat turns up, they go on the Chinook and they're just hoofed straight over the channel back to a sand dune in France. And we say, well, France, this was the deal that we had, that you'd stop these people. These are the few that you missed. I guarantee you, Patrick, this trade would be disrupted in a week and this problem would cease. What we've got, we're at the tail end of failure. We've got the tail end of failure of Frontex, an EU border force, stopping people coming in the first place. We've got a failure of the whole Schengen zone, that once you're in one country, you can just go as you please. And go from Greece to Belgium or France without a buy nor leave. And then we have this problem of ECHR and all the rest of it, where we seem to be bound in anything we try and do. Other countries don't do this. I'm the chairman of the APPG for Hungary, and listening to what they do over there on the Serbian border, if people get across, they are escorted back to the gate and pushed through and said, you don't have any validity here. You're back in Serbia. There doesn't seem to be ECHR cases or the lawfare or nonsense that we're seeing here. I'm afraid it's time for some tough and very straight talking.
No, they don't mess about at all. Do you think it's time for a public vote on this? Because we're getting nowhere fast, and I suspect if the public were asked to vote on whether or not they wanted their taxpayers' money spent, around £169,000 per person in the short term of it, sending a few people to Rwanda as a deterrent, or they wanted the continual, never-ending, ongoing cost of what's currently going on in the Channel and nothing being done about it, then I suspect that they would come down quite heavily on the side of Rwanda. And I think that that would put a lot of people back in their box, Craig.
Well, I think you're right, but I don't think actually need a referendum on this. I think the answer is very, very clear. I know it from my email inbox as a parliamentary MP in South Thanet that people are sick to death of this. And when we talk about the escalation of costs to potentially 30-odd million pounds a day, if we have a rate of progress of people coming in, that amounts to 11 billion a year. And let's just put that into context. We spend 17 billion a year on policing. So we're talking about a potential cost of 2/3 of policing. And let's get it into real perspective. I've had enough of it. People have had enough of it. It's time for some tough action. And I'll say again, Patrick, I cannot understand how France can project military power to an entire country called Mali in West Africa, but seems virtually incapable of patrolling plus or minus 3 miles from Calais.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I would also extend that notion to us now. We seem able to prop Ukraine up in a proxy war with Russia, but we are unable to patrol that little bit of water. And in fact, one of the key issues, it would appear as well, a story that I'm doing later, apparently our lifeboat service, you'll love this, Craig, they're not diverse enough. There's an alpha male culture there, and they're going to be sent on courses. Well, I'm sorry, but the amount of people that they're picking up in the channel, I would suggest that they are quite pro-diversity. They seem to be very, very good at bringing people over to this country. But can we factor in some of the other costs as well? Because this is a discussion about value for money, and I want you at home to get in touch with me now, gbviews@gbnews.com. In light of this new report today that shows that it would, in the short term, cost more money to send people to Rwanda than it would to process them here over a course of 4 years and put them in hotels. It cost around 60 grand more. If you looked at that metric, can we factor in some other costs, Craig? 300 million quid was supposed to be a big regeneration project around the Scampton area. That would have brought in with it tourism. That would have brought in with it a load of stuff for the local community. That's been wiped out because of that. We're going to have ongoing hotel and accommodation costs of around £11 billion. We've got our public services that will be absolutely crippled as well. You're not building a new GP surgery in the same area that you are plonking 1,000 new asylum seekers. You are not building a new school. You're not building it anywhere near like enough housing. And on top of that, we are also allowing around 1.2 million people to come to this country legally. And I'm sorry, but you can't put a price on the loss of culture, Craig, and that is something that will go down the toilet as well. When you add all of that up, we are paying too much as it is, aren't we?
No, there's no doubt at all. I mean, just putting the illegal migration aside, the cross-channel ones, giving out over 1 million visas last year, and a net increase in population of 600,000, I think it stands to reason that we then have a housing problem, we have a rental problem, and we have problems in public services. I mean, it doesn't need the wisdom of Solomon to come to that conclusion. We need to look at why we've got so many being offered a visa, and a lot of it is on the back of, there's jobs to be filled and all the rest of it. But I still struggle with that when we've got 5 million people on a form of benefit and over 1 million jobs still available. So, let's match those up first. If we've still got a shortage of skills, then, of course, that's the time to look abroad. But I think we're a long way away from that. But, we really ought to look at the capital cost of what it really does cost to have people in the UK. Because it's a real cost over time. It's all very well people saying, well, there's a revenue improvement because people go to work, pay tax, all the rest of it. That's still a big shortfall on the overall cost of huge immigration numbers. And we need that debate. We need that debate, and I'm happy to have it.
Yeah, well, we're very much happy for you to have it right here. But, Craig, thank you very much. Craig McKinley there, Conservative MP for South Thanet. We'll return to that topic later on. Get your views coming in, gbviews@gbnews.com. Get more on this story on our website, gbnews.com, the fastest-growing national news site in the country. Best analysis, big opinion, all the latest breaking news. But get this, a bombshell report out today claims that racism, sexism and elitism are widespread in cricket. I'm sorry, what a load of cobblers. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
OK, well, shortly, Matt Hancock says he's profoundly sorry for every death caused by COVID-19 and find out why electric vehicles are making the country's pothole crisis even worse. But first, we're going to Preston now, where an inquest has concluded that Nicola Bulley drowned accidentally falling into cold water. I'm going to go to GB News' North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper for the very latest. Sophie.
Well, in the last hour or so, we have heard the findings from the coroner in this Nicola Bulley inquest. He said after hearing evidence from various experts, he would conclude that her death came about as a result of drowning. Now, in terms of concluding why she died, he said there was no indication of any intention of Nicola to take her own life. The evening before, she'd behaved normally with her parents. The morning of, she behaved normally with her partner, Paul. He said it was also highly unlikely that she would leave her dog, Willow, whom she was so devoted to, that she would leave her unattended. It was also quite a public place, he said, and it would have been easy for someone to save her if she had have been trying to take her own life. So as a result, he discounted the idea of suicide and said, I conclude that Nicola Jane Bulley died an accidental death. Now, in the last few moments, we've heard statements from Lancashire Police and a statement on behalf of the family read out by their solicitor. He said that they would never forget our Nikki. He also thanked on behalf of the family for the support they've received from around the UK, but also from around the world. However, they did also address the negativity and the speculation that's been rife on social media. They said, we encourage people to look at the facts and to be mindful of the impact that words do bring. Now, it's 5 months to the day today since Nicola Bulley first went missing back on the 27th of January. But now we finally do have a conclusion to this inquest that, according to the coroner, she died an accidental death via drowning in the River Wyre.
Sophie, thank you very much. Sophie Reaper there, GB News' North West of England reporter. Now, to a bombshell report that claims that sexism, racism and elitism are all rife in cricket. The Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket was set up in 2021. It was commissioned in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in the United States and all of that Black Lives Matter stuff as well. I'm joined now by the former England captain and cricketing legend, royalty, David Gower. David, thank you very much. I've got to say, I'm actually very angry about this report. Structural and institutional racism exists within the game. Do you buy that?
Yeah, well, hi. The danger with all these things
is that nuance disappears. For instance, you introduce this as a bombshell. Yes, it's very revealing. Obviously, the report has only been launched today, only been revealed today. I certainly haven't read it. All I've read are the headlines. I've read the responses from the chairman of the ECB, from the chief executive, from the head of the Professional Cricket Association, all of whom are apologising. But rather than bombshell, how about firecracker? Yes, there are a lot of things need addressing. And a lot of things have come to light in the last few years since the Azim Rafiq case has been made very, very public. And yet, it all seems, dare I say, there's a lot of stuff on either side or on both sides, which hasn't really come out properly. So one of the things I've always said about this game, I've been involved in cricket for a long, long time, as you can probably see. And the thing that has always been special for me as an international player, and I mean, I can't necessarily speak for club cricket. I mean, I'm not a part of club cricket of this current era, but for international cricket all those years ago and now, there is an absolute togetherness. Players from all sorts of different countries, from all sorts of different creeds, they all mix together very, very happily. Now, that is one part of it for sure. Lower down, I mean, there are attitudes across this country which are not just to do with cricket, which we know are all very much societal, which need sorting out. And I think the message is this. There are lots of things that can be done to improve the situation. Lots of things have already been tried and failed. So lots more needs to be done. ECB are going to do what they can to set that course in motion. But let me give you another example. I represent something called the Lord's Taverns. I'm currently president of the Lord's Taverns, a charity linked to cricket for the last 75 years. We run all sorts of programs, including something called Wickets, which is designed precisely to get children of all colours, ages, creeds, young children rather, of all colours, creeds, and the rest of it, off the streets and into cricket. And it's a very, very successful project. And people like the Lord's Taverners, people like Chance to Shine, another very, very good cricket charity, are very, very inclusive. And that is part of this process. We're already doing that, and cricket is already doing that.
This is the thing,
I would
David.
just caution against getting too extreme about this.
But this is the thing, David, right? This is just another one of those reports where it was almost a foregone conclusion, and then there are no real solutions, like you've just said there. But when it comes to a couple of things here, I will just talk about someone who was, a former club cricketer. There are entire teams around the Lancashire, Cheshire, Greater Manchester area, where I grew up playing my cricket, where English would not be spoken in the dressing room or out on the pitch. The idea that there is some kind of structural racism there, I think people would find absolutely laughable. Local cricket clubs shine a light on the fact now that they have really good strength women's teams as well. When it comes to the issue of women's pay in cricket, David, I'm going to be quite blunt about this. When the women's game puts as many bums on seats as the men, i.e. they start bowling as quickly and hitting the ball as far, then that becomes as good a product as the male game, and therefore the pay would be reflected. Until then, I'm sorry, but they're not going to be paid as much as the men, are they?
Yes, again, it's an area where one has to be very careful for all the usual reasons. If you look into the global sports, the more global sports, which I would describe as tennis and golf, then the rewards for the top women players in those sports are incrementally higher than they are currently for cricket. But again, cricket has made enormous strides in the last, decade plus. We had the first edition of the women's IPL, which has given an extraordinary opportunity to the world's best girls and women to play cricket for decent money. We've seen the 100. One of the best things about the 100 in this country is the exposure it's given to the women. But I agree entirely. Women's cricket, anyone who watched, for instance, the Ashes Test match that just finished between the women of Australia and England, and who watched the previous Test match between the men of Australia and the men of England, will know it's a very different game. I mean, that's not being sexist. I'm afraid that is just a reality of the way the two versions of the game is played. And at this stage, to suggest that equality in pay is justified is a stretch. I've got to say that is a stretch. I mean, yes, I'm entirely in favour of each and every opportunity being presented to the women of this country, Australia, and the rest of the world to play the game as best they can. And there's so many resources being pushed their way in the last decade, and the progress they made is brilliant. We're not quite at the same stage as the Lionesses in football, who, of course, brought women's sport to light beautifully in the last 12 months or so. But I think rather than sort of looking to create artificial targets. The simple story is this. Whichever of those allegations, whether it's the sexism, the misogyny, the elitism, whichever one of those allegations you want to look at first, and whichever apply to whichever organisation we're talking about, look at it deeply. Yes, of course, you have to look at it deeply, and you have to set high but realistic targets to try and improve it.
Yeah, look, David, thank you very much. It's always an absolute pleasure. Good luck to you. I hope to chat to you again very, very soon. David Gower there, former England captain, cricketing legend. Just very quickly, a couple of the other things here. It says that a drinking and puerile lads culture across the sport puts women at risk of unwanted attention, acts as a barrier to the inclusion of Muslim communities. I mean, the non-alcoholic champagne that is sprayed everywhere whenever England or now a lot of lower league teams win, I think would put pay to that, frankly. Also, the idea now that cricket clubs see, genuinely, the women's game, this is a local village cricket club level, as a massive money-making opportunity to get more sponsors in. That completely nullifies this idea there is a barrier to entry for women, and that apparently black cricket has been failed by the ECB. OK, all right, well, how do you explain the demise of cricket in the West Indies, then? There we go. Loads more to come on this between now and the end of the show. But find out what Matt Hancock said at the COVID inquiry. But first, it is your latest headlines with Tamsin.
Patrick, thank you. Here are the headlines at 3:34. The inquest into Nicola Bulley's death has concluded the mother of two died from accidental drowning. The senior coroner, Dr James Adley, told the inquest Nicola fell into cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January whilst walking her dog along the River Wyre. Her body was found 3 weeks later after an extensive search. Lancashire Police says it hopes the coroner's findings will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging to Nicky's family. The family's lawyer, Terry Wilcox, says they are grateful for the support they've received.
The last few months have been extremely tough to process for our family. The emotional impact will stay long in our hearts, and whilst we will never forget the loss of our Nicky, we will forever remember her as the brilliant mum, partner, daughter and sister that we all knew and loved so very much. The help and support we have received over these past few months has meant more than words can say.
The threat of more strikes by nurses in England has ended after a ballot on further industrial action failed to meet the legal threshold. The Royal College of Nursing says 84% of its members voted to back more strikes, but only 43% took part, so it failed to reach the required 50%. The nurses started their industrial action towards the end of 2022 in a bitter dispute over pay. Former Health Secretary Matt Hancock has concluded giving evidence to the COVID-19 inquiry. He said nothing can bring back the people who died, but that necessary measures need to be taken and early to stop a future pandemic from killing people. He said the system for running adult social care is flawed and was in nowhere near good enough shape when COVID hit in 2020. A watchdog has found Boris Johnson's actions in the lead-up to his Daily Mail job announcement show an urgent need to reform. The Advisory Committee on Business Appointments says the former Prime Minister told them about the new position only 30 minutes before he announced it on Twitter. But the rules state former ministers should neither announce nor take up jobs before receiving advice from the committee. Well, you can get more on all of those stories by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2745 and €1.1632. The price of gold is £1,506 and 39 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100 is at 7,437 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Two political stories rolled into one here. What's Hancock said at the COVID inquiry, and should Theresa May resign over an alleged lockdown party? Let's start with Hancock, shall we? He said he's profoundly sorry for every death caused by COVID-19. He told the coronavirus inquiry he understood why some people would find it difficult to accept his apology, though it was honest and heartfelt. And when he was questioned about the pandemic planning, he said he struggled to talk about his feelings, as he blamed doctrine for believing the UK had things under control. Let's hear him apologising once again, shall we?
Profoundly sorry for each death that has occurred. And I also understand why, for some, it will be hard to take that apology from me. I understand that. I get it. But it is honest and heartfelt.
Could clip the first few words of that and send it to his wife, couldn't we? GB News' Deputy Political Editor Tom Harwood is outside the inquiry for us now. Tom, let's start with Hancock, shall we? Oh, they're after you, Tom. OK, so he said he's profoundly sorry, has he?
He has, and he's used that phrase that politicians like to use so much these days, those three words, I get it. Clearly that was speaking to those who feel really rather aggrieved at him for the policy of the government over those 2 years of varying levels of restrictions. And it's clear why there was so much emotion, I suppose, around today's hearing. Matt Hancock was in many ways the face of government messaging, government health messaging for so much of that time period. And so a lot of people are zeroing in on him with regards to what went on. But there was some interesting points raised beyond the sort of more emotional side of things, shall I say. The substance of what was discussed was actually fairly profound, because ultimately we looked back at where the UK was, and indeed where the UK was judged to be in 2019, when an international ranking of various countries, all countries actually, for how prepared they were for pandemics, put the United Kingdom top. International experts from every region, many different countries of the world came together and ranked the United Kingdom best prepared for a pandemic. Now, the contention of Matt Hancock is the framework that was used, the way in which we all thought about pandemics in the run-up to COVID was completely and utterly wrong. One example, for example, is how the United Kingdom was given extra points in that ranking for saying it wouldn't close its borders in the event of a pandemic. This was the received wisdom of the crowd of experts at the time, the groupthink that existed, that meant that when, for example, Donald Trump shut the American borders, or Jacinda Ardern shut the New Zealand borders, the WHO criticised them. The World Health Organization in late February 2020 was still issuing press releases saying you shouldn't close your borders. This was the sort of groupthink that was discussed, and I think the interesting point is it's not particular to the United Kingdom. There were many, many mistakes clearly made, and this inquiry at the moment is looking at what went on in the run-up to the pandemic, the preparedness. We heard from David Cameron in recent days about his view that the United Kingdom was well prepared for flu, but we weren't struck by a flu, we were struck by COVID. Matt Hancock disagrees slightly with that analysis. He says that even our preparedness for flu, which was ranked oh so highly around the world, would not have served us well. The way in which we thought about these things was very, very wrong. And his contention, and this might be a little bit controversial, is that we should plan for more lockdowns in the future. Matt Hancock said that if we want to get things right, get the response right to future pandemics, having plans in place for stay-at-home orders might make those orders themselves less draconian, better understood, and more effective.
Well, I mean, that is certainly interesting. It's one way to make yourself even more unpopular, I suppose. But, Tom, I've got to ask you now, we're going to do a quick pivot, and we're going to talk about Theresa May. I'm going to read a headline to you. I'm going to get your reaction. Theresa May attended Anne Jenkins' lockdown-breaking celebration party event. Is she under pressure? Does she have to face an inquiry? Will she have to quit as an MP?
Well, this is a fascinating story, and it does it gives some insight into how lots of MPs from all different factions and sides and indeed parties thought about some of these COVID restrictions in a very different way to how they're remembering how they thought about them now. This particular event, unearthed by the Guido Fawkes website, is talking about an event that took place in the second national lockdown, when people were not allowed to leave their homes except for essential purposes. And an organisation called Women to Win, which campaigns to get more conservative female candidates selected, held an event. Now, Boris Johnson attended that event virtually via Zoom, as did David Cameron, but also Theresa May decided to turn up in person, which was a little bit interesting. And afterwards, she stayed around to talk. Now, there aren't any photographs of Theresa May with drinks in hand, and we are led to understand that she left fairly soon after the event, although not immediately. There are photographs of others who attended that event, which was described as a celebration. Some people describe it as a birthday party, with drinks in hand, not wearing masks. And let's not forget that even though it was described, some of these events that have been organised and uncovered by Guido Fawkes have been described as socially distanced and all the rest of it. There was no such thing as a socially distanced drink that was within the rules at that time. It was at the time of lockdown. And it is a little bit interesting how there is so much focus on Boris Johnson's really rather miserable cabinet table event. And you can see the photographs of him that sometimes do the round. He's standing there looking like the most miserable man on earth, 2 metres away from the Chancellor, as they stare over some stale orange juice. Now, that's supposed to be the most raucous, career-destroying party. And yet, photographs of an event that Theresa May attended have now surfaced, not including her, but including others at that event, drinking and having a good time at what was described as a celebratory event. It does seem that potentially there are some double standards here.
Yeah, absolutely. Tom, thank you very, very much. Tom Harwood, our deputy political editor there, whizzing us through the political latest. Surely we've got to have an inquiry into Theresa May, haven't we? Surely we've got... I mean, apparently it was described as a birthday party. If there was any cake there, I'll tell you what, heads will roll. Anyway, we already knew that electric vehicles could cause multi-storey car parks and bridges to collapse. But it's now been confirmed that they create more potholes than petrol cars. I'm Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Well, in a few moments' time, I will have the very latest on the government's plans to send migrants to Rwanda. I've been asking you if you think it's value for money. I'll go to those emails shortly. But get this, a recent report found that it would take 11 years and £14 billion to repair all of the potholes in this country. But now it turns out that the government's drive, see what we did there, to get us all to buy electric cars is making the problem worse. This is just another instalment of us being led by idiots, isn't it? A story has found that electric vehicles cause twice as much damage as petrol and diesel cars. This is because batteries used to power electric cars are so heavy. Also, there should probably be some investigation as to where a lot of these batteries come from, because they're not nice parts of the world, are they? But it was reported recently that 1.4 million potholes were repaired every single year. But anyone who drives in the UK knows the problem appears to be getting worse, not better. There is only one man to talk about this subject. He is Mr. Pothole. Mr. Pothole joins me now. Hello, sir. Thank you very much for taking time away from solving the nation's pothole crisis one hole at a time to join me on this show here. So, shock horror, electric vehicles are worse than other cars when it comes to potholes.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I've been warning about it. It's not only the weight of the vehicles and the battery, it's to do with they've got 10 times the energy on the initial pull away. So therefore, the load that applies to the wearing surface, latitudinally and longitudinally, creates problems and starts breaking the tarmac down. So, you know, we've got a massive backlog in road maintenance, and now we're just going to load even more vehicles on that are going to destroy that. Can you imagine when they actually put lorries that are EV on the roads? I mean, you're talking, 10,000 times axles on that network. So, it is complete madness at the moment.
So just to clarify, we are hurtling headfirst into a situation where we are being semi-forced into buying electric vehicles, and the price that we will all have to pay for those electric vehicles is not just the cost of the vehicle, but us redoing pretty much every single road, bridge and multi-storey car park in Britain.
Yeah, it sounds like that. I mean, there seems to be no sense. I mean, EV vehicles have been exempt from road fund licence, what everybody calls road tax. Now they're saying, they should start introducing it. I've always said that every vehicle that uses the road network should pay a contribution for maintaining the roads. It should be ring-fenced and used on their roads, not billions of pounds each year taken by Treasury to spend on other things like HS2.
No, indeed, you raise a really good point there about the lorries as well, because those lorries are going to be unbelievably heavy, aren't they? Unbelievably heavy. And they will be going down all sorts of roads. Delivery lorries go to absolutely everywhere, especially as well, I'm thinking rural country roads here, the kind of place where maybe the road hasn't been maintained for a very long period of time. You drive an electric heavy goods vehicle down one of those roads and you just leave rubble in your wake. It'd look like Raqqa.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of our rural roads are not built to any high standard. The situation will be that our roads will get so dangerous that they will have to shut them if they haven't got the funds to do so. I can see the potential where it will be fouled road signs and it will cut off communities eventually.
Now, look, Mr. Pothole, you've been doing some good work out of your own pocket, I understand it. You've been putting your money where your mouth is. What can people do to fix potholes? Just tell us a little bit about what you've managed to do.
I mean, obviously report them to your council and chase them, your MP and councillor. If you don't get any success, someone contacted me after I was on with you recently, and I helped them prepare a case to actually threaten legal action. And surprise, surprise, within a week, 15 dangerous potholes got filled in that was affecting their business.
Wow. In fact, we've got a headline of it there. I'm a road expert and I'm showing the rule which forces councils to fix potholes. What is the rule? Very quickly.
It's under the Highways Act. It's called Section 56. It gives you the right to issue a notice to a council that's out of repair.
There you go. Mr. Pothole, an absolute legend. Thank you very, very much. Great stuff. Now, there's just over 24 hours to go until my date with Destiny. Yes, more than a year after I promised to perform with the... Thank you, guys. More than a year after I promised to perform with a group of male strippers. It's finally going to happen tomorrow evening. More than 1,000 people will be packed into the Churchill Theatre in Bromley in Kent to watch me strut my stuff with the Dream Boys. I will be doing 3 routines, including a solo. I met up with the guys a few hours ago for my final rehearsal. So this is part of the routine here. So, yeah, I'm starting there. I'm getting the crowd going. You see, very much the front man of the operation here. What I can tell you is that if you are eating now, maybe you want to look away because the cringe value is only going to get even worse, I'm afraid. Horrifically out of time to begin with. Yeah, there we go. And, yeah, this is part of, as you can see, I can't watch this, the solo. There will be a uniform on the night. Can we stop this anytime soon? Yeah, OK, all right. The shirt's going unbuttoned there. It's all very grim. The belt comes off. OK, I think we can knock this on the head, chaps. Who's back there? Yeah. Now, shall we? No, we're going to keep playing it, are we? We're going to keep... We've got a replay. Oh, good. That's very good of you. Yes, thank you very much, everybody. Oh, and this just goes on and on and on. Right, look, I'm doing this to raise money for... No, OK, I'm doing this to raise money for the mental health charity Mind. And I'm delighted to say thank you. Good grief, sorry. Yeah, it's supposed to be humiliating. That is why I'm asking for your money, so I can humiliate myself in order to raise a bit of money for charity Mind, the mental health charity. So far, you wonderful people have raised more than £71,000. And thank you to everybody who's given money so far, right the way from £2 all the way up to £2,000. Please, if you've got a bit of dosh, go to justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. That is justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. The mental health epidemic is real, and 12 men a day still are taking their own lives. Unfortunately, people find it very, very difficult at times to access immediate urgent mental health care when they need it through the NHS. So that's where people like Mind come in. And what I have been really struck by, and I will read some of the memorials that you've been sending me in throughout the course of this fundraising effort. What has really struck me is the amount of people who are donating whatever amount of money they can afford, and they're saying, this is for my brother, this is for my boss, this is for my dad, this is for... And it goes on and on and on. And when you read, as I do, I read every single comment that people make when they donate on this, justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys, you realise the catastrophic impact that suicide has on people and on those around them. So if you've got a few quid, please let's save some lives together. Justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. Anyway, here's what's coming up. The government's controversial plan to deport migrants to Rwanda could cost more than keeping asylum seekers in the UK, but there is more to meet the eye on that, and I will be telling you exactly why I still think it's value for money. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
all sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, we're going to read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 4 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News. The Rwanda plan, value for money or not? Apparently, it costs more to deport people to Rwanda than it would to process them here. Yes, OK, but that's not looking at the full cost of keeping people here permanently. I will drill down into that. In other news as well, we're going to be talking a bit about this as well. The Nicola Bulley verdict from the inquest is in. Accidental death is the upshot of all of that. OK, in other news, I'm also, of course, going to be talking a lot about the cricket report. Yes, this report has come out saying that cricket is institutionally racist, sexist, etc. What a load of complete and utter rubbish. I will be picking that apart, essentially line by line in a second. You do not want to miss that. And as well, we're also going to be talking a lot about this story as well. Theresa May. Yeah, it's all gone quiet over there, hasn't it? Pretty virtue signally, Theresa May. Well, now there's calls for her to face some kind of inquiry. Dare I say it, maybe even step down. Did she attend an illegal lockdown gathering that some people described as a birthday party? Surely not. Well, we'll find out, won't we? And finally, it is just one day to go until I dance on stage with the Dream Boys. I did my final rehearsal today. It's all for a good cause, try to raise money for the mental health charity Mind, justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. Please, 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 if you've got a couple of quid, chuck it over there. We can save some lives together, and I will be utterly humiliating myself on stage tomorrow. Patrick Christys, GB News. Get the comments coming in. gbviews@gbnews.com. Rwanda, value for money. Also, cricket. Seriously, do you think it's really racist and sexist? I certainly don't, but we'll have a long chat about that. gbviews@gbnews.com. Headlines now.
Patrick, thank you. Let's start with some breaking news from the United States, where prison workers charged with guarding... There it is again. Charged with guarding the accused sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have been blamed for a series of failures in the lead up to his suicide. The 66-year-old killed himself while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. A new report by Inspector General Michael Horowitz singled out 13 Bureau prison employees for their misconduct and dereliction of duty. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. Now, the main news on GB News today is that the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death has concluded. The mother of two died from accidental drowning, with senior coroner Dr James Aidley telling the inquest that Nicola fell into the cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January whilst out walking her dog along the River Wyre. Her body was found 3 weeks later after an extensive search. Lancashire Police says it hopes the coroner's findings will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging to Nicky's family. The family's lawyer, Terry Wilcox, said the family are grateful for the support they've received.
The last few months have been extremely tough to process for our family. The emotional impact will stay long in our hearts, and whilst we will never forget the loss of our Nicky, we will forever remember her as the brilliant mum, daughter and sister that we all knew and loved so very much. The help and support we have received over these past few months has meant more than words can say.
Now, the threat of more strikes by nurses in England has ended after a ballot on further industrial action failed to meet the legal threshold. The Royal College of Nursing says 84% of its members voted to back more strikes, but only 43% took part in the ballot. That failed to reach the required 50%. Nurses began their industrial action towards the end of 2022 in a dispute over pay. The Health Minister, Maria Caulfield, said nurses agreed to a good pay deal.
Welcome the fact that that we did reach an agreement. That pay rise is going to be landing now in over 1 million NHS workers' pay packets this month, and that will make a real difference to them. So we welcome the news today that strike action is on hold for nurses.
The former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has finished giving evidence to the COVID-19 inquiry. He said nothing could bring back the people who died, but that necessary measures need to be taken early to stop a future pandemic from killing people. He said the system for running adult social care is flawed and was nowhere near in good enough shape when the pandemic hit in 2020. He also revealed the UK came within hours of running out of medicines for intensive care during the pandemic. He told the inquiry he was wrong to think the UK was prepared for a pandemic.
The UK was one of the best placed countries in the world for responding to a pandemic, and indeed in some areas categorised by the World Health Organization as the best placed in the world. And you can understand that when you're assured by the leading global authority that the UK is the best prepared in the world, that is quite a significant reassurance. That turned out to be wrong.
A watchdog has found Boris Johnson's actions in the lead-up to his job at the Daily Mail show an urgent need for reform. The Advisory Committee on Business Appointments says the former Prime Minister told them about the new position only 30 minutes before he announced it on Twitter. But the rules state former ministers should neither announce nor take up jobs before receiving advice from the committee. Senior supermarket executives from Tesco, Asda, Sainsbury's and Morrisons have been questioned by MPs over rising food prices. Food inflation has eased for a second month as supermarkets begin to cut some of the prices of household goods, including milk, cheese and eggs. Figures from the British Retail Consortium show that shop price inflation overall slowed to 8.4% in June. That's down from 9% in May. GB News reporter Will Hollis has more.
Supermarket bosses took a lengthy grilling this morning from that cross-party of MPs on the Business and Trade Committee. They were asked about things like price caps on baby formula, as well as food bank usage amongst their employees. But this was ultimately about profit, asking why food prices in the shops are still so high when their own costs, wholesale prices, have been coming down for quite some time.
International news, and the Kremlin says that Vladimir Putin's position is not shaken by the mutiny. His comments come as the president of Belarus offered Wagner Group founder Yevgeny Prigozhin relocation to the country in a deal to end the rebellion launched on Saturday. President Putin made a public appearance praising Russian troops for stopping the coup attempt. Putin also announced he'd launch an investigation into how the money that was paid to Wagner and its founder was spent. Racism, sexism and elitism are widespread in English and Welsh cricket, according to a new damning report. The Independent Commission for Equality in Cricket collected evidence from more than 4,000 people and found that racism remained entrenched in the sport and that routinely women encountered sexism and misogyny. The ICEC has made 44 recommendations for the England and Wales Cricket Board. The chair of the ECB, Richard Thompson, has apologised and called for a reset of the game. That's the latest news. More news as it happens. Back now to Patrick.
Loads on today. I'm getting stuck into this right at the top. This new report that cricket is racist and sexist is a complete load of rubbish. Firstly, think about this. The report was written by the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket, and in this day and age, any report into anything will conclude that something is institutionally racist and sexist. So just bear that in mind. So I completely reject the premise, for starters. It highlights the fact that England's male cricketers received 13 times the amount paid to England's women players and suggests there should be equal pay at domestic level by 2029 and international level by 2030. This is really simple. When women start hitting the ball as far as the men and bowling as quickly as the men, they will create an equally good product as the men and draw big crowds. Until then, there is no reason at all to pay them the same. Asking people to get in touch themselves to highlight if they've ever felt discriminated against will elicit a certain response, won't it? So when the report states that structural and institutional racism continues to exist in the game, I imagine that will come as a huge shock to the local cricketers in, say, Lancashire, Cheshire and Greater Manchester, like where I used to play, where entire cricket clubs are made up of British, Pakistani, Indian and Bangladeshi players, where overseas professionals regularly come from the West Indies and the subcontinent. I have actually played in teams where I was pretty much the only white guy. The language being spoken in the changing rooms and on the field was not English, so I couldn't communicate with them. A lot of the lads knew each other from their local communities, so there would be a bit of favouritism in the batting order and stuff like that. I suppose if you ask me to cite that specific example of whether or not I'd ever felt excluded or discriminated against, well then, yeah, I'm not bothered about it. The report says that black cricket has been failed and the ECB must develop a plan to revive it. All right, fine. What's the excuse for why cricket in the West Indies is in decline? Could it possibly be that in some cases, fewer black people want to be cricketers? They say that there are more black people represented in golf. So are you honestly telling me that there is a more inclusive attitude in the golf club bar than there is on the cricket pitch? Have a day off. There is a culture of elitism, apparently. Well, you don't have to be a genius to work out that a private school will have better cricket facilities than an inner-city comprehensive. What do they also have? More land to actually play the cricket on. The same, really, could be said for anything. What was the report's solution to all of this? Well, money. Money, money, money. And they admit it might not be affordable to give every school the same facilities. Yes, that's true. So, in fact, that's not a solution, is there? There isn't one. Poor people are blocked from playing cricket, apparently. That's not a race thing. That's the same for any working-class council house boy from Yorkshire. Annual club memberships for a local team can be around 200 to 300 quid. Subs per match might be around a tenner, maybe 15 quid at a push. But things just cost money, don't they? And that, unfortunately, is how things work. The report calls on the annual Harrow versus Eton match, as well as the varsity game between Oxford and Cambridge, to be replaced by a state school under-15s competition and a finals day for university teams to indicate that the sport is becoming more inclusive. Oh, great. So just do away with decades of tradition to appease the diversity brigade. Get this, a drinking and puerile lads culture across the sport puts women at risk of unwanted attention and acts as a barrier to the inclusion of Muslim communities. Stop it. Just stop it. There are entire teams in every league pretty much made up of entirely Muslim players. Non-alcoholic champagne is popped when teams win. Local clubs are now actively marketing a strong women's section because it is a fantastic way to grow the club and, as well, to increase your membership and make money. So that report there, in my view anyway, is just complete rubbish. Cricket is also based on statistics. If somebody is averaging 50 with the bat and taking a few wickets every game, every single team will want them to play for them. There will be examples, undoubtedly, unquestionably, of reports of people suffering racism. 100%. And that is wrong. There are idiots out there. But that doesn't make it institutional, does it? How dare this report brand our wonderful traditional British game institutionally racist, sexist, etc. If people really want to find racism in something, they will. And that's why we end up with words like structural racism, unconscious bias. But what's the solution? Seriously, what is the solution? Every cricket club shuts the bar down, do they? They only serve halal meat. Do we have a quota for ethnic minorities per team? I mean, good grief, can you imagine if they enforced that quota system the other way round in certain parts of the Lancashire League, for example? I mean, you do well to find some white players at certain teams there. It's just ridiculous. It's absolute madness. We don't need a procession of virtue-signalling apologies. We don't need a radical systemic change. Just leave cricket alone. Well, so I think I want to hear from you. GBviews at gbnews.com. I will have a lot more on this story a little bit later on in the show. But now we're returning to the Rwanda scheme, because the government's controversial plan to deport migrants to Rwanda could cost more than keeping the asylum seekers in the UK. That's according to government's own analysis, but there is more to it than meets the eye, because an economic impact report into the illegal migration bill says that deportations to a safe country would cost around 60 grand more per individual. The Home Office report found that sending an individual to Rwanda would cost about 170 grand. That's higher than the estimated 106 grand to process the migrants in the UK, which includes accommodation at 85 quid per night and supporting them for an estimated, get this, 4 years while their asylum claim is processed. That is an estimated £63,000 more to send a migrant to Rwanda. But last year, nearly 46,000 people crossed the channel on boats. And if the crossings continue to rise at the current rate, the report found it would cost the UK £32 million a day by the end of 2026. So to effectively break even, the Rwanda plan would have to deter 37% of people crossing the channel. And the Home Office believes that it would do that. Joining me now to discuss this is Jonathan Gullis, the Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North. Jonathan, thank you. What this report doesn't factor in is the ongoing cost of keeping someone in accommodation, finding them a social house, looking after their kids and sending them to school, making sure they've got a GP's appointment and everything else.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Patrick. Ultimately, what is happening here is that the Home Office is making it very clear that the Rwanda policy is a deterrent factor. It deters people from needlessly risking their lives, putting thousands of pounds in the hands of smugglers, and hopefully will have a really positive impact in making sure that as numbers drop, which I think they will because people will be deterred, we'll see that cost come down for the taxpayer, because fewer and fewer people will need processing, fewer and fewer people will need to be kept in accommodation, fewer and fewer people will need to be put in social housing, in school places, in GP surgeries, etc. So there's a lot of positives here that we don't talk enough about. It's just a shame the Shadow Home Secretary hasn't got the memo, because all they ever talk about on the Labour benches, Patrick, is speeding up processing. What they really mean by that is let's have an amnesty, but they don't want to say that because they know it'll be political suicide.
Well, we're at now, and I think it's time that people fronted up to it, isn't it? Where they just said, instead of saying no to Rwanda, instead of saying no to turning boats back, instead of saying no to detention centres, instead of saying no to everything, why don't they just admit that they don't like borders and they want to let everybody in?
Well, I totally agree with you, Patrick. It's so frustrating to see, muttering under his breath, the Shadow Immigration Minister, Stephen Kinnock, saying it won't deter people, as though, because of course he knows better than everyone else. He's so clever, so intelligent, so pious. It's amazing his ego fits inside the House of Parliament, to be perfectly frank with you. But ultimately, what we have learned from this is that I have every faith that the Court of Appeal is going to find with the government, as the High Court already did. Hopefully we'll be able to get those planes off the ground as soon as possible. And then the Labour Party is going to have to answer the question, Patrick, that if they are to get into government next year, and the poll suggests that they might do, they need to be able to answer the question. If they were in charge, what would they do? Would they cancel the Rwanda policy? And they've been very coy since the turn of the year not to fully say those words, because ultimately what they're preparing for is yet another U-turn, something that we know Keir Starmer is so fond of.
Look, if the Rwanda plan stops the boats, there's no way Labour's reversing that. Look at what happened in Australia. They turned the boats back, it got massive criticism, it stopped illegal immigration, the next party comes in, they keep the exact same policy in. So they're not going to change anything whatsoever that actually stops the boats. The question is about value for money, though, Jonathan, I must say. It is a lot of money per migrant. Are you convinced that it would act as a deterrent? It would have to stop apparently 37% of crossings. That's a lot of people.
No, absolutely, I'm convinced, because when I was on the Nationality and Borders Act bill committee, as it was back then, we heard from the Australian High Commissioner, who made it very clear that this did act as a deterrent when they were using such a model in Australia. They obviously empowered, or smugglers, as they've even themselves reported to local authorities in France, for example, that when the Rwanda scheme was being talked about, people were starting in France to ask about making themselves settled status in the French region. So ultimately, we see firsthand from French officials and smugglers who have been captured that the Rwanda policy would be damaging, would break apart their operational model. And I think, yes, it will be a hit in the short term to the public finance, but ultimately will drive down those costs long term, act as the deterrent that we need it to, and hopefully, therefore, get control of our borders, which I know so many people are desperate to see, particularly your very sound viewers on GB News, who ultimately voted to leave, I'm sure, in large amounts in 2016, and voted for the Conservatives, many for the first time, because they wanted to deliver on those promises to take back control of our laws and our borders.
And what do you say to those people who then go, well, look, you know, it says it's £63,000 less to just keep those people here. It's not cost effective and it's inhumane.
Well, I remind those people, Patrick, that, as you said earlier, that doesn't take into cost the amount of social housing that we'll need to put people up in, and potentially housing in the future, the school places, and therefore the money per pupil per year that child will experience, the cost of the NHS that obviously won't be factored in or long term as well. And of course, just the as the immigration minister said, the social cohesion that will be challenged as well in local communities. Ultimately, people need to understand that, yes, there might be a saving by processing quicker, but if we carry on accepting 70% plus, which we are at the moment, of those who come here illegally, that is, as I say, the Labour's plan for an amnesty. I, at the very least, want to get down to those French numbers of at least 18%, because if the French can do it, why the hell can't we? And I'm just very disappointed today, Patrick, to hear that the government has dropped, obviously, the plan under Dominic Raab, which was to obviously scrap the Human Rights Act and ignore the ECHR. I think these are things that would have helped us on delivering this important piece of legislation like the illegal migration bill.
This is what a lot of people get very frustrated at, which is that there is the whiff of a good idea that might actually solve the problem, and then by the time it goes through the Commons, the teeth of it are pulled out. And so you're kind of making your lives difficult. And there doesn't appear to be that much investment into actually getting more people in the Home Office to process these claims, which, you know, as long as they aren't all, you know, bang in favour of open door migration, which might be a bit of a stretch, but as long as they aren't, they might actually process some people and then say to them, no, you can't come here. So do you really think that Rishi Sunak understands the importance of him actually stopping the boats, as opposed to just standing on a plinth and saying it?
No, look, I've got to give full credit to the Prime Minister here, because I've generally been in the room with him many times, listening to his passion, his attention to detail, and the fact that I know he's having, I think, once, maybe even 2 meetings per week with the Chancellor, with the Home Secretary, with the team in Number 10, to make sure that when this Rwanda policy has gone through our domestic courts and been approved, that the operationalisation of the policy is ready to go immediately. And so I do think he understands it, and I hope he understands it as well, because ultimately, let's be honest, Patrick, you've seen the polling. If the Conservatives don't get a grip of this, then they're absolutely done at the next general election. And
it is amazing, isn't it? Because it's not as if the other party is actually really proposing a serious solution. And in fact, they are pretty much holding their hands up and saying, well, we're not really going to try and stop the boats that much, and we're probably just going to maybe end up with more people here. And people are just so annoyed with the way the Tories have been going about it, they might accept that. Look, Jonathan, thank you. Jonathan Gollis there, Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North, reacting to whether or not you think it's value for money, this Rwanda plan scheme. Supposedly it's going to cost around £63,000 more in the short term to get people flown over to Rwanda. Of course, you've got to factor in those knock-on costs of keeping people here indefinitely. Schooling, housing, health, etc. GBviews at gbnews.com. Just one quick one. The cost of sending migrants abroad for assessment is expensive. He says it's much better to just turn the boats back. That is from John. Keep these views coming in. Now, you can get loads more on that story on our website, gbnews.com, which is, of course, the fastest growing news site in the country. Loads of the best opinion, analysis and big breaking news. Now, 8 days ago, Theresa May tore into Boris Johnson in the Partygate debate. Now it turns out she went to a party during the second COVID lockdown. I tell you what, that's a party I would not have wanted an invite to. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. In the break, I've just had some fantastic news, which I will bring to you very shortly. I'm not going to do it now. We'll do it properly, but I'll bring it you shortly. So make sure you keep your eyes and ears peeled. This is really going to set a cat amongst the pigeons. But in just a few moments' time, I will be discussing this controversial report that claims that racism, sexism and elitism is widespread in English cricket. And the countdown continues for my big night with a group of male strippers. Hey, not for the first time. Yes, there's just one day to go until I get my kit off in front of 1,000 people for charity, by the way, in case you're just tuning in for the first time. I can't wait. Now, cast your minds back to just over a week or so ago when Theresa May stood in the Commons after the Partygate report into Boris Johnson and told us that playing by the rules was important for our democracy.
People see us making rules for them and acting as if they are not for us. That trust that I spoke about between the public and Parliament is undermined. If they see members of this House trying to save the careers of friends who have been clearly found by due process to have been guilty of wrongdoing, as happened in the case of Owen Paterson, their respect for us is eroded. And without that trust and respect, their faith in our very parliamentary democracy is damaged.
Well, the former Prime Minister may have been caught red-handed. as she's now under pressure to pipe up about her appearance at a socially distanced party she attended during the second full lockdown. The panel did turn into what has been described as a birthday party, right? But it's understood that May left before this and wasn't pictured with a drink in hand, which apparently now means something. I'm joined now by GB News presenter Darren Grimes. Darren, I don't know about you, but there has to be some kind of full inquiry. There has to be heads rolling here. There needs to be lawyers roped into all of this. And good grief, if there was any cake, then she should never work again.
Well, look, I mean, it's quite rich listening to her say that there was due process. It's a bit like putting a Remainer in charge of Brexit, that committee. Oh, wait, we did do that, didn't we? It was her, and she completely failed. Because Harriet Harman and Sir Bernard Jenkin, he might be a Tory, but he hates Boris Johnson. It wasn't due process. It was anything but due process. And I mean, Patrick, I was listening to what you said earlier. I struggled during lockdown, right? It was probably quite lonely. I don't mean to sound like Prince Harry, but I was living in London at the time. And I tell you what, even if I'd been invited to an illicit party with Mrs. May, I'd have to say no, because she's about as robotic as Keir Starmer and about as fun at a party as a vegan in a bacon eating contest. So no cheers, I'm all right if it's all the same with you. But just consider the facts. It's really extraordinary that, first of all, we had Sir Bernard Jenkin, who, as I say, doesn't like Boris Johnson one jot, found to have potentially breached the rules, and he went on to use said rules to eject Boris Johnson from Parliament. And now, as you rightly say, Theresa May has question marks around what she's been up to. She said last week that Boris had been found wanton, and that was before MPs voted overwhelmingly to actually endorse that official report to boot Boris out of Parliament. But I'm sure many viewers, Patrick, will agree with me that Theresa May can't talk about Boris Johnson being found wanton when, as I say, she promised to respect the wishes of the British people. In 2016, she became Prime Minister, and she did all she could to ensure that we had the worst hand in those negotiations that you could possibly have, because she refused to countenance a no-deal exit. It was a bit like, Patrick, which you'll have done many times before, walking into a car dealership and insisting from the off that you're not going to leave without a car, no matter what the price. So she was found wanton. So Boris Johnson, I'd take him again and again over Mrs. May.
Now, Darren, I'm about to throw something at you here, OK?
Uh-oh.
This is big news. We've had it confirmed to us. Today is the day of the Trick Awards, OK? So TV Media Awards, OK? The news has just come through. Nigel Farage has won the News Presenter of the Year award. He's smashed the establishment again. Fantastic. You love to see it, don't you?
Absolutely. That's made my day.
We're going to be playing some clips of this very, very shortly. There was some usual boos. I've had a quick look at it. Nigel gets on stage, absolutely tees off, right? But anyway, so Nigel Farage has won the News Presenter award at the Trick Awards, apparently. So there we go. Darren, your immediate reaction?
Well, look, I think it just shows that GB News really is the people's channel, because Nigel Farage, of course, a politician that's long been on the side of the British people. And I think he probably really has thrown a cat among the pigeons there, because this is a sort of lovey awards ceremony and he's won. Yeah. So I very much doubt they imagined that would happen, Patrick, but I'm over the moon to hear that it has.
Well, as they say, Darren, you're not laughing now, are you? You're not laughing now. There you go. Look, Darren. Yeah, thank you very much. Just quickly, just to return to what you were talking about before. The contrast between Nigel Farage and Theresa May could not be more stark. That guy wanted to get Brexit done properly, and then in the wake of the referendum, which he fought so hard for, by the way, Theresa May rocks up and, as you said, tries to undermine us. Do you think that she may be about to fall victim to her own virtue signalling and her own, nicety and decency in all of this, because she's made a rod for her own back? If she has broken lockdown rules, and you saw the way that Boris Johnson was treated, she's got to go, surely.
Well, look, I don't think that would happen, though, because, of course, the Labour Party quite like Mrs. May, because she's basically a social democrat, Patrick. She's not a conservative. And, I mean, it turns out she may well have been at a gathering that wasn't strictly necessary or potentially permissible under the rules. But, all of a sudden, Patrick, running through a field of wheat isn't the naughtiest thing that Mrs. May might have done, eh? That's exciting. But I do find it extraordinary, the sheer brass neck of the woman, right, to criticise Boris consistently as she has done when she was such a useless Prime Prime Minister, and now, of course, the potential breach of the rules. It just all shows that these rules were never proportionate. Someone like Mrs. May, who was a technocrat by heart, couldn't actually obey the rules herself, it transpires. The whole thing was cruel, it was unnecessary, and that's what I take away from this. But if she is hoisted by her own petard, I don't think it could have happened to a nicer politician, Patrick.
Darren, thank you very much. Stellar stuff. And as you can see on his background there, Darren will be on your screens for the Saturday 5 this Saturday evening. What time is it again? I've been on it a few times, I should know. Is it 8 p.m?
8 o'clock. I think you're on it this weekend, aren't you, Patrick?
Yep. OK, Darren, thank you very much. Darren Grimes, GB News presenter. Right, look, I tell you what, we're going to be coming in strong when I come back in a second because it's, I'm getting a true cricket legend's reaction to claims that racism and sexism are widespread in cricket. And I will ask whether Sir Keir Starmer is facing a backlash from Labour MPs after he ruled out bringing in free school meals for all primary school kids. Should every kid at school get a free school meal? No, I don't think so. And Nigel Farage has just dished it out to the establishment yet again. He's won at the Trick Awards and he has served up one hell of a speech. Polly Middlehurst with your headlines.
Patrick, thanks very much indeed. The latest headlines this hour. In the United States, the prison guards charged with guarding accused sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have been blamed for a series of failures in the lead-up to his suicide. The 66-year-old killed himself while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. A new report by Inspector General Michael Horowitz singled out 13 Bureau of Prison employees for misconduct and dereliction of duty. Here, the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death has concluded. The mother of two died from accidental drowning. Senior coroner Dr. James Aidley told the inquest Nicola Bulley fell into the cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January whilst out walking her dog along the River Wyre, and her body was found 3 weeks later after an extensive search. Lancashire Police says it hopes the coroner's findings will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging to Nicky's family. The former Health Secretary Matt Hancock has finished giving evidence to the COVID-19 inquiry. He said while nothing could bring back the people who died, necessary measures need to be taken early to stop a future pandemic from killing people. He said the system for running adult social care was flawed and it was nowhere near in good enough shape when the pandemic hit in 2020. And some more breaking news within the last 15 minutes. The British Medical Association has announced hospital consultants in England will be walking out on July the 20th and 21st. That's after they voted heavily in favour in a dispute over pay. More on that as we get it. Well, the threat of more strikes by nurses in England has ended after a ballot on further industrial action failed to meet the legal threshold. The Royal College of Nursing says 84% of its members voted to back more strikes, but only 43% took part in the ballot, so it failed to reach the required 50%. And as you've been hearing, GB News has picked up a series of Trick Awards today. GB News Breakfast News won the multi-channel news programme. Applause in the background there from our very own Patrick Christys. And as you've been hearing, Nigel Farage has nabbed News Presenter of the Year in a surprise snatch in an open public vote. Congratulations to them. More on all those stories, head to our website, gbnews.com.
Right, I promise you, OK, we're going to be going to Nigel Farage's controversial acceptance speech at the Trick Awards as quickly as we possibly can right here. You are not going to want to miss it if you ever just see a man teeing off and serving up some much-needed home truths to the establishment media. You are about to get it with both barrels from the man himself. Stay tuned. I'll bring that to you very, very shortly. Yes, all right. But now to the bombshell report that claims that sexism, racism and elitism are all rife in cricket. So the Independent Commission for Equity in Cricket was set up in 2021. It was commissioned, believe it or not, in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in the United States. England captain Ben Stokes says the sport needs to do more to make cricket truly inclusive.
We must go further and be more inclusive and diverse because the game I love and the millions worldwide love should be enjoyed without fear of discrimination or judgment, whether that be due to your upbringing, race or gender. As I said earlier, everyone has a different story to tell. I am Ben Stokes, born in New Zealand, a state-educated pupil who dropped out of school at 16 with 1 GCSE in PE. I needed help with the spelling and grammar in this speech, and I am currently sitting here as the England men's Test captain. It is clear there is so much more the game has to do, and as players, we really want to be a part of that to ensure that this is truly a sport for everyone.
Right, let's just digest what he said there, OK? So, he's an immigrant, technically. Well, he is, really. He has openly said that he's essentially not particularly good when it comes to reading and writing, which I think shatters that elitism issue, doesn't it? Do we not all just think this is a little bit weird that this report has come out? I certainly find it. Earlier in the show, I spoke to one of Ben Stokes' predecessors as England captain, OK? Just before I go to David Gower, I just want to say this. How can a sport be considered institutionally racist when you have entire teams, in some places almost entire leagues, that are played by people who are teams of people made up entirely of ethnic minorities as well? When it comes to the women's pay issue, women are paid significantly less than the men in cricket. They draw lower crowds, and the quality of cricket in the women's game, I'm sorry to say, is so much lower than it is in the men's game. For now, that may change, and when it does change, I would hope they'll be remunerated properly for it. But that is not the case. That is not the case. Anyway, here's David Gower. He told me that when he played cricket, he was never aware of any problems with racism in the sport.
The danger with all these things is that nuance disappears. For instance, you introduce this as a bombshell. Yes, it's very revealing. Obviously, the report has only been launched today, only been revealed today. I certainly haven't read it. All I've read are the headlines. I've read the responses from the chairman of the ECB, from the chief executive, from the head of the Professional Cricket Association, all of whom are apologising. But rather than bombshell, how about firecracker? Yes, there are a lot of things need addressing. And a lot of things have come to light in the last few years since the Azim Rafiq case has been made very, very public. And yet, it all seems, dare I say, there's a lot of stuff on either side or on both sides, which hasn't really come out properly. So one of the things I've always said about this game, I've been involved in cricket for a long, long time, as you can probably see. And the thing that has always been special for me as an international player, and I mean, I can't necessarily speak for club cricket. I mean, I'm not a part of club cricket of this current era, but for international cricket all those years ago and now, there is an absolute togetherness. Players from all sorts of different countries, from all sorts of different creeds, they all mix together very, very happily.
Yes, they do indeed. And anyone who plays local cricket or has played local cricket will understand that it is probably the most ethnically diverse sport that you can possibly play in Britain. And when it comes to the women's game, cricket clubs are tripping over themselves to advertise strong women's teams. Why? Yes, well, there's the inclusion and diversity issue. There's also, of course, crucially, the issue of club membership and money as well. So the idea that there would be a barrier to entry for anybody playing cricket in this country on the grounds of their gender or race is a complete and utter fiction. Joining me now is social policy analyst Dr. Rakib Assad. Dr. Rakib, if we listen to every single inquiry that we'd ever had in this country, cricket is institutionally racist and sexist. So is the police force, the fire brigade, the army, teaching, everything. Everything is. I'm sorry, I just do not see this. Do you think that realistically structural and institutional racism seriously exists as a major barrier to entry for people who are ethnic minorities in the world of cricket in this country?
Well, Patrick, as you said, this inquiry, this investigation was set up in response to the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement in the UK. What I find remarkable is that we have a report here which is ultimately supposedly focused on the state of cricket in England and Wales, and it specifically mentions George Floyd in the foreword. And I think what that tells you is that there's this cultural and political Americanization of British sport, in this case, the most quintessential of British sports. And I think that when you look at, for example, England's victory in the 2019 Cricket World Cup, which was held here, you had a brotherhood which spanned race, ethnicity, class, even country of birth. So I just think that if you had a game, a sport, which had a hostile environment towards racial and ethnic minorities, and that the ethnic and racial discrimination was widespread in the game, would you have a situation where you had such a diverse winning team back in 2019? I'm not entirely sure. A team which, by the way, was captained by someone who was born in Dublin.
It was captained by someone born in Dublin, and when they won, I think I'm right in saying that they had non-alcoholic champagne. Well, that certainly seems to be the norm now anyway, where they have non-alcoholic champagne, because obviously they want to be sensitive towards the non-alcoholic rules of the Islamic faith, which is, one thing, that's fair enough. It also goes on to say that black cricket has been failed by the ECB. It must do more to develop a plan to revive it. I can't help but notice that cricket in the West Indies is in decline. I'm not really sure they could blame the ECB or racism for that, for goodness sake. I mean, are there not just certain cultural elements as well that might lead to some people not particularly wanting to get involved and spending hours every single week playing cricket at the weekends and training once or twice a week as well?
There's a variety of factors at play, Patrick. I've often talked about class-based barriers when it comes to participation in grassroots cricket. As you know, compared to other sports, cricket-related facilities, maintaining them, as well as purchasing cricket-related equipment, it is relatively expensive. So I think there is a debate to be had in terms of how much do we invest in those facilities, especially in the inner cities. But if you look at certain working class communities, especially Black British communities in London, it's just the fact that perhaps football is more popular. There's more successful co-racial footballers for young Black British people to admire and to look up to compared to cricket. So I think that there's cultural and economic factors at play. But I still think compared to other sports, cricket has done fairly well, in my view, when it comes to racial inclusion. I think you see that through our national cricket team and their fantastic achievements in recent times. I also think there's a debate to be had in terms of hosting more state school fixtures at our major cricket grounds. Many inner city kids, these stadiums are on their doorstep, but they may feel distant, and I think that should change. But I think more generally, my main issue with the report, Patrick, is that it was overly doom and gloom. And I think that when you have a country, just recently, the timing of the report is remarkable. Just last week, Rehan Ahmed, 18 years of age, Pakistani Muslim origin, born in Nottingham, he was called up for the second Ashes test. And I just think that the timing of it is unfortunate when you see such amazing sporting stories in the game of cricket.
Yeah, absolutely. Hasib Hamid was called up, essentially as a teenager, to open the batting for England.
He
from
was.
Lancashire, originally.
On a tour of India as well, which is a challenging tour.
On a tour of India, right? So thrown in right at the deep end. I believe he was opening the batting with Alistair Cook at the time. It's a good way to start your career, isn't it? The list could seriously go on and on and on when it comes to our proud history. We are... we've won a World Cup very recently. We're doing rather well with Bazball. We lost the first Ashes test, but going on. And yet this is just another example of highlighting just inherent negativities around something when I don't think there is much of a need to. And I'm sorry, but I refuse to believe that this report was seriously looked into by anyone who has ever spent any time genuinely getting immersed in the grassroots elements of cricket up and down the country. Just very quickly, very finally, Dr. Rakib, when you ask people to highlight a problem, so in terms of the actual way this report is put together, you say you invite people to give you their own experiences. Are you not eliciting a certain type of response? Are you not kind of loading the dice in a way?
I think it's entirely possible when you have these investigations, you may attract people who may have negative orientations towards the game, and I think that there's a great deal of positivity that could be told in terms of our game of cricket, the power in terms of cultivating social cohesion in our local communities, and I think that's really missing in this report.
Dr. Rakib, look, thank you very much for your time. As ever, my good man, take care. Dr. Rakib Hassan, the social policy analyst. Look, it's got a lot of you going in the inbox, that's for sure. GBviews at gbnews.com. What does anybody expect about a report? Yorkshire have hated Lancashire for hundreds of years, and Surrey hates both of them. Say that there's taking a little bit of a joke there at the whole thing. Steve says it's Bash the British Day, isn't it? This cricket thing is commissioned by people who want to see race in everything. That's from Jan. Yeah, look, I completely agree with you. GBviews at gbnews.com. But a reminder of the breaking news this hour. Nigel Farage has won the News Presenter of the Year at the Trick Awards, and I will bring you some of his victory speech very shortly. Spoiler alert, he absolutely tees off on the industry and just demolishes a load of hecklers as well. You know what? They'd do well to see what the public really think, wouldn't they? Get out of their little media bubble. And I will be asking whether Sir Keir Starmer is facing a Labour rebellion. He's refusing to promise to give free school meals to all primary school children. Should all kids eat for free? Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel. Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Heads.
So, Nigel Farage has just won the News Presenter of the Year award at the Trick Awards. It's a public vote. So the public get to vote on this. And he was booed by industry executives when he went on stage to collect his award. They do not like it up them. He did an absolute firecracker of a speech. I've got a little flavour of it. I'm going to play you the full version just after 5 p.m, but here is a little bit of this fantastic victory speech.
Well, of all the people to present me with this, my very good old friend and great broadcaster, James Moe. James, thank you very much indeed. And I have to say, I'm really rather proud to have this because I'm a new boy. Only been doing this for a couple of years, so a huge thanks to all those good ordinary folk who live outside the M25 for voting for me. I suspect that had the industry had the say, I very much doubt I would have won, and I'm certain that 3 GB News presenters would not have been in the shortlist of 5, which should be very instructive for the whole of the industry. You see, the investors, please do keep the abuse coming, because it says a lot more about you than it does about me.
Yeah, so he got hounded, and doesn't that just show the disconnect between your establishment and the real people who vote for people like Nigel Farage? The public have spoken at the end of the day, and GB News has not just won one award, it's won another one as well. So thank you very much to everybody who is watching us, who's tuning in, who's engaging with us, and crucially, who has gone out of their way to vote for us. Nigel's speech will be in full just after the turn of the hour. Now, I've just got time to squeeze this in, OK? So we're going to be talking now about Sir Keir Starmer. Is he risking a Labour backlash? He's ruled out providing free school meals to all primary-age pupils. Senior party figures, including Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London, they've started to roll out schemes to feed all youngsters regardless of backgrounds. Joining me now is former Labour Minister. It is Dennis McShane. Dennis, should all kids eat for free?
That's just daft. I mean, Sadiq Khan's rightly taking on the Tory cruelty against poor children in poorer parts of London. When we started Sure Start in 1997, it was about 20% of the country. Where I was an MP in Rotherham, it transformed lives. And Nick Clegg and David Cameron in 2010, 2 right-wing millionaire bastards.
Nick Clegg being a Liberal Democrat.
Yes, of course, but a Tory. Well, non-Liberal Democrats are Tories.
OK.
And they cut all that food and support, and the poverty started and we're still living with. And of course we're not going to feed. I mean, we go out from here to Mayfair, to Kensington, to Chelsea.
Well, why did he suggest it in the first place?
He never did. There were people inside Labour, I think inspired by Marcus Rashford, but his was a response to the fact that in COVID, kids weren't going to school of any sort. He wanted to feed them at home.
Is it the responsibility of the state to feed people's children? I mean, isn't that the job of parents?
It is. It's a responsibility of the state to ensure there isn't hunger or such poverty children can't be fed. We've had too much of that in the last 11 years. That's done through fair wages. Some schools, some areas certainly need extra help. But the notion we're going to pay for free school dinners at Eton is just laughable.
Yeah, but what about state schools then? Come on, what about every single inner-city state school?
Well, inner-city now, you're getting a bit warmer there because some of those can be very poor. I don't know if Mayfair counts as inner-city or Solihull or Sutton-Coldfield or the leafy where the footballer millionaires live in Cheshire. I don't know, Patrick. But we have to target everything. It's a Daily Mail story. I love the Daily Mail, but really, they do get away with nonsense.
Well, no, I mean, look, seriously, Keir Starmer now could be facing a bit of a backlash if he doesn't do this. I mean, you know, Sadiq Khan is doing it. People might have thought if you vote Labour, then he's going to care for hungry kids, but now you could spin it that he doesn't.
No, Sadiq is saying that in very poor areas of London, people think of London as an immensely rich and wealthy city. At the heart of the cabinet, you've got more millionaires sitting around the table than any other boardroom in Britain. But there's some incredibly poor bits of London. Sadiq himself knows, because he grew up from a very poor immigrant background, what it's like. So he's applying generous thought. Somebody's cranked up this idea that Labour's going to start providing free school dinners at Eton. I had free school dinners, I think. Do you know something? I hated them. It was a long time ago. I'm sure they're much better now.
All right, look, Dennis, thank you very much. Short and sweet, but great stuff. Dennis McShane there, of course, former Labour Minister. What do you make of that? Do you think that kids should eat for free? Just a reminder of that big breaking news. The public have spoken, and Nigel Farage has been named as the best news presenter of the year at the Trick Awards. I will play you Nigel Farage's glorious, massive 2 fingers up to the British media establishment in a few seconds. Patrick Christys, GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com? You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's 5 p.m, it's Patrick Christys, it's GB News, and it's winner, winner, chicken dinner. 2 times, GB News has absolutely smashed it out the park. So, Nigel Farage has won News Presenter of the Year at the Trick Awards, and guess what? So has GB News Breakfast. They have also won an award. I will be playing you Nigel Farage's speech, victory speech, which is basically a massive 2 fingers up to the establishment media in full. The main sponsors asked him to leave a drinks reception at the start. He was booed by establishment execs. He didn't care. He carried on, and then he was escorted off stage. You will not want to miss it. Oh, and I'm also going to be joined as well by the wonderful, the fabulous Ellie Costello and Stephen Dixon, who also scoops a gong. So, yes, fantastic. Well done, everybody. In other news, we're also going to be talking about this. Is Rwanda value for money? Apparently, it costs more to deport people to Rwanda than it does to process them here. But, of course, the ongoing costs of keeping someone here are way higher. higher. So false economy or not, do you think it's value for money? In other news, we're also going to be talking a lot about this. Yes, get this. So apparently our lifeboat crews are not diverse enough. There's too many alpha males, and when they are not picking people up out of the channel and then dragging them to British shores, they are now going to have to go on woke diversity courses. You couldn't make this stuff up. What else have I got? Let's find out, shall we? Moore's going to be talking about this. The Biased Broadcasting Corporation. Well, I tell you what, tune into Nigel Farage's speech and you will hear just how biased some of the BBC apparently are. But there are strong criticisms that they don't understand the working class. And if you are on the BBC and you're working class, is it true that you just have to be dour and miserable? So we've got all of that coming your way and much, much more as well, haven't we? And of course, yes, it's one day to go until I get my kit off on stage with the Dream Boys. Tell you what, that's something you don't get on the BBC, isn't it? I'm doing it to raise money for the mental health charity Mind. You can donate, justgiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. Let's save some lives together, people, OK? I've lost 4 stone for the privilege and I will be humiliating myself. So if you've got a couple of quid, I think Mind might appreciate it. Patrick Christys, GB News. Let's get you straight over to the headlines, but when I come back, we will be playing Nigel Farage's epic victory speech in full. It's got it all. You will not want to miss it. Now, though, headlines with Polly.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening to you. We start tonight with the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death, which has concluded the mother of 2 died from accidental drowning. Senior coroner Dr James Aidley told the inquest today that Nicola Bulley fell into the cold water and gave no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January while she was out walking her dog along the River Wyre. Her body was found 3 weeks later after an intensive search. Lancashire Police says it hopes the coroner's findings will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging for Nicky's family. The family's lawyer, Terry Wilcox, said the family are grateful, though, for the support they've received.
The last few months have been extremely tough to process for our family. The emotional impact will stay long in our hearts, and whilst we'll never forget the loss of our Nicky, we will forever remember her as the brilliant mum, partner, daughter and sister that we all knew and loved so very much. The help and support we have received over these past few months has meant more than words can say.
Hospital consultants in England are to walk out next month after voting heavily in favour in a dispute over pay. More than 24,000 members of the British Medical Association voted in favour of industrial action. That's 86% on a turnout of 71%. It said that unless the government makes a credible offer, members will go on strike on July the 20th and 21st, just days after junior doctors have finished their 5-day strike. And the threat of more strikes by nurses in England has ended after a ballot on further industrial action failed to meet the threshold needed for it to take place. The Royal College of Nursing saying 84% of its members voted to back more strikes, but only 43% took part in the ballot, which means it failed to reach the required 50% needed to make it a legal option. Nurses began their industrial action towards the end of 2022 in a dispute over pay. The Health Minister, Maria Caulfield, says nurses agreed a good pay deal.
Welcome the fact that that we did reach an agreement. That pay rise is going to be landing now in over 1 million NHS workers' pay packets this month, and that will make a real difference to them. So we welcome the news today that strike action is on hold for nurses.
And the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has finished giving evidence to the COVID-19 inquiry, saying nothing could bring back the people who died. He added, in future, there'd need to be early intervention to stop another pandemic killing people. He said that adult social care was flawed and was in nowhere near good enough shape to cope when the pandemic hit. He also revealed the UK came within hours of running out of medicines for intensive care. He told the investigation the UK was ultimately ill-prepared for a pandemic.
The UK was one of the best placed countries in the world for responding to a pandemic, and indeed in some areas categorised by the World Health Organization as the best place in the world. And you can understand that when you're assured by the leading global authority that the UK is the best prepared in the world, that is quite a significant reassurance. That turned out to be wrong.
A government watchdog has found that Boris Johnson's actions in the lead-up to taking his new job at the Daily Mail demonstrate an urgent need for reform. The Advisory Committee on Business Appointments say the former Prime Minister told them about his new position only 30 minutes before he put it out on Twitter. The rules state former ministers should neither announce nor take up jobs before receiving advice from the committee. In the United States, prison guards charged with guarding the accused sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have been blamed for a series of failures in the lead-up to his suicide. The 66-year-old killed himself while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. A new report by Inspector General Michael Horowitz singled out 13 Bureau of Prison employees for misconduct and dereliction of their duties. More on that story later on this evening. The Kremlin says that Vladimir Putin's position is not shaken by Yevgeny Prigozhin's attempted mutiny at the weekend. The comments came as the president of Belarus offered the Wagner Group leader a relocation deal aimed at ending the rebellion, which was launched on Saturday. President Putin made a public appearance yesterday praising Russian troops for stopping the coup attempt. Putin also announced he'll launch an investigation into how the money that was paid to the Wagner Group and its founder was spent. Now, as you've been hearing, GB News has picked up a series of Trick Awards today. GB News Breakfast News has won multi-channel news programme. Nigel Farage has been called the News Presenter of the Year in a surprise win this afternoon. This is GB News. More news as it happens. Back now to Patrick.
Loads to get through, one place to start. Nigel Farage has beaten the establishment again. He's been named as the Presenter of the Year at the Trick Awards, which are voted for, shock horror, by you, the great British public. And it's fair to say his victory speech was absolutely glorious. I'm going to play it for you now. Strap yourselves in. This is Nigel. Stick it to... Oh, and just listen to some of the boos coming from the media execs. Bear in mind that, according to Nigel, the main sponsor of the event had already asked him to leave the drinks reception area beforehand. So this is what happens when establishment legacy media meets who the British public actually like and value. Take it away, Nigel.
Well, of all the people to present me with this, my very good old friend and great broadcaster, James Moe. James, thank you very much indeed. And I have to say, I'm really rather proud to have this because I'm a new boy. Only been doing this for a couple of years. So a huge thanks to all those good ordinary folk who live outside the M25 for voting for me. I suspect that had the industry had to say, I very much doubt I would have won. And I'm certain that 3 GB News presenters would not have been in the shortlist of 5, which should be very instructive for the whole of the industry. You see, the investors, please do keep the abuse coming, because it says a lot more about you than it does about me. Well, whether they're BBC or not, I don't mind. But learn this, and those of you shouting, think about this. There's a gap in the market, a massive gap in the broadcasting market. You've all become too much the same. And that's why the investors in GB News, and led by Angelo Frangopoulos, have gone out there, and what we're doing is we're creating a new identity brand in British broadcasting. And when we overcome the awareness problem, it's going to be a major force in British broadcasting. Now, I've been through this process before, of course. I led a party that was mocked and derided at lunches like this that went on to win a national election. And in those days, it was the polling industry who didn't understand this. Here's my one very serious point. Please take it on board. Poor old Rob can't open his eyes. He's finding it so tricky, so awkward, so difficult. This industry is worth between about 12 and 15 billion pounds every year. And it matters culturally, it matters in so many ways in our country. And yet, the way we measure who is watching and who is listening to programs is I had much louder than this in the European Parliament, sir. I'm disappointed. The idea that Barb, from which all the advertising is set, is owned by the existing broadcasters means the industry is marking its own homework. The idea that 5,300 boxes across the country, oh, I can hear the noise. There's a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of money at stake. Any idea of competition, and you should shout, and you should be frightened, because you will lose your jobs, because I can tell you this, Barb is wrong, and we need reform of this system. We need, oh look, there we are. We need the heavies to come. And if you cannot see as an industry that the way you're measuring TV ratings is out of touch, is out of date, then I feel very, very sorry for all of you.
Oh my gosh. So, Nigel's victory award, victory speech there. Well done, but it's important, very important for us to say that, yes, Nigel's just done that big barnstorming, massive two fingers up to the establishment and all of that stuff, but he's not the only winner. And I am delighted to say that I can speak now with the wonderful, the beautiful, the fantastic, and crucially the victorious Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello, both presenters on the award-winning GB News Breakfast programme. Oh, you two, fantastic. Well done. How do you feel?
Amazed, actually. Because I'll tell you why, Patrick, because it's about establishment, isn't it? It's all about the establishment, and when you're up against, the ITV Evening News or Good Morning Britain or all these different things, you think, well, we'll have a run at it, but we're not going to win. So the fact that actually enough of our viewers and listeners got onto their laptops and their mobiles and voted for us says it all, doesn't it? We're going places. People are listening.
Yeah, I mean, it's a public vote, isn't it, Patrick? And that's what matters. The public, they like what we do, and it feels so nice to be up against stiff competition, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like ITV, like BBC, and it's us that steps away with the gong. It feels amazing, doesn't it? It feels
You're going to drop that
good.
in a minute.
I just love it. I just want to be like, yes!
This is great. This is brilliant. This is brilliant. So look, just talk me through it. So the moment that you guys won then, what happened? What was it like in there? What went on?
Well, they ran through the nominees, and I was just sort of sat there, because we were right at the back of the room, so I just thought, well, just see what happens next. When they said GB News Breakfast, I couldn't believe it.
No, and it was a long walk up to the stage,
It was a very long walk up, so off we went. And I had no idea, I'd not prepped anything.
What did you say? I don't know what you said.
I don't know, it was something fabulous.
It was incredible, of course, whatever it was.
What it wasn't was controversial. We left that, but unfortunately we missed Nigel's speech.
We missed Nigel, Patrick.
Because we were having our pictures taken upstairs, so we didn't hear that bit.
Well,
but we hear there was drama.
It was, yeah. It all went very calmly, very smoothly. Nobody was offended. Nobody had their nose put out of joint. It was all absolutely fantastic. But seriously, though, guys, how does it feel to know that the British public genuinely, unequivocally, adore what you two do? I mean, it's so fantastic. Like, well done, well done. I mean, it must be a great feeling.
Well, this is what it's all about. I mean, Patrick, I've been in this business for 30 years now, and to actually do something where we hear from our viewers and listeners every day, we go through hundreds and hundreds of emails and tweets, and to know that people are liking what we do, well, that's the point. isn't it? What's the point in talking to a camera if nobody, well, they might have you on in the background, but they're not actually paying any attention? Well, people are joining us, they're listening, and they're staying with the programme for a long period of time, and they like what we do. And that's the best thing you could ever hope for.
Yeah, and that's what means the most, the fact that it's a public vote. I mean, Anne Diamond's not here right now. She's not here today, but she's done amazing work with you as well. Eamon and Izzy, they're inside. They're having a glass of champagne. They're in the bar right now. They're having a lovely time. They've done stellar work during the week as well. But it's just so amazing that the audience is at the heart of what we do, and it's the audience that's voted what we've done here, and that's what means the world. I mean, even on the way here, we were stopped, weren't we? And people were saying, we love what you do, we love the breakfast show, we love Steve. I mean, the love is everywhere, and now it's public, and it's out there for the world to see. It feels really good.
I'll tell you what, Patrick, this proves we really are the People's Channel.
Abso-flipping-lutely, 100%. Now, I've got to ask, what's the plan now? Are you going to be joining Eamon and Isabel at the bar, are you?
Well, I already have a champagne on the go, Patrick. You've pulled me out the bar to be here.
And I've got to get the train back to Milton Keynes. So there you go.
You might have a cheeky one.
I might have a cheeky one.
You might have a cheeky one.
It's rock and roll. Well, look, guys, honestly, well done. And thank you as well, because from a personal note, when, you know, seeing that you guys are winning and seeing that you guys are popular, it does great stuff for the channel as a whole, right? And it will only help this show, it will help every other show out there. And I just want to say, I wish I was there to give you guys a massive hug. So thank you, and well done, well done. Much love. Mwah. Take care. Enjoy.
Love you.
All right, take care. Well done. Well, I mean, good grief. Hey, there we go. Well, GB News does the double, don't we? We've got Nigel Farage and we've got The Breakfast Show as well. You'd love to see... You know what? It's nice when it happens to nice people as well. I think that's the thing. They are up against stiff competition. They're up against the big beasts here. We've only been going for 2 years, and, you know, it's not always been plain sailing here, to say the least. People decide that they want to get stuck into us on social media, etc. But this sums it up. This is what we're all about. This is certainly what I'm all about. I've said it from day one. Just because a particular story or a particular news angle appeals to people that live in Westminster or people who just live around a little bubble in London, that is not what most people are talking about around their dinner tables every single evening. That is not what most people turn to their missus or their husband or whoever on the couch and gets them going on the telly now. And that's what we try and do. We try and do it a bit differently. Anyway, thank you very much to everybody who's voted and everybody who's taken part. Now, moving on. Talking of topics that you actually care about that you don't see elsewhere. Anyway, if the government, it's going to cost them 169 grand to send every migrant to Rwanda. If you watch every other media outlet, they will probably tell you that this is an absolute rip-off. I will tell you why I think it's worth every penny. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, a reminder, big breaking news, GB News has won not 1, but 2 awards at the Trick Awards, which are voted for by the public. Nigel Farage has been named Best Presenter of the Year, while The Breakfast Show won the Multi-Channel News Programme Award. They're up against the big beast. They were even heckled. Nigel was heckled by industry executives as he was taking his award. The main sponsor of the event tried to not allow him into a drinks reception beforehand. But you know what? When the public vote, GB News wins. So fantastic stuff. And thank you to everyone who watches, tunes in, etc. You're a loyal bunch and we love to see it. Moving on. In a few moments, I will discuss the claim that the BBC only wants to feature working-class people if they're miserable. But before that, the government's controversial plan to deport migrants to Rwanda would cost more than keeping asylum seekers in the UK. Now, that is according to the government's own analysis. There's more to it than meets the eye, though. An economic impact report into the illegal migration bill says deportations to a safe country would cost around 60 grand more per individual. Joining me now to discuss this, and we're going toe-to-toe, I believe, head-to-head, is international security and border control expert Henry Bolton and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Both of you, thank you very much. Henry, I will start with you. This report, for me, is quite short-sighted in the sense that, yes, the one-off payment might be less, but by the time that you've allowed people to stay here and processed them and sent their kids to school and allowed them to use the NHS and built a house for them, that cost is more.
Yeah, Patrick, of course, yes, but what concerns me about this, and I have no problem with the Rwanda programme. If people want to come here irregularly, unlawfully, and they're seeking asylum, then they might as well go to Rwanda as here. I have no problem with it in theory. What I suspect is going to be the case, though, is that these costs are going to grow and grow and grow. The Home Office's own figures are now looking at 32 billion a year by 2025, I think. But I might have the year wrong, sorry. That is about 1/4 of the UK defence budget. Now, I know, because I've been involved in disrupting the people smuggling networks back until Tony Blair pulled the funding on the programme in 2006, that you can do this for a great deal less. We allocated, on average, about £300,000 to each country to work, to the budget for UK guys in countries along the route to disrupt the movement of people across, working with local law enforcement in a tactical, operational manner, not just as liaison officers. And so I've got fundamental issues with the whole way that the Home Office is approaching this.
Yeah.
But but I don't have issues with Rwanda itself.
It doesn't matter which way you dress it up. I think no matter what, it's costing us too much money. OK, but I suppose the question is whether or not there is a coherent argument to be made that it is more cost effective to keep asylum seekers in Britain for processing than it is to send them to Rwanda. Matthew, your views?
No,
Matthew.
Those sums.
Someone take his mic down. There you go. Go on, Matthew.
Patrick, you know, and I know, and Henry knows. We all know, and most of the viewers, I think, know if they look into their hearts and think about this properly as well. This isn't working. This is an absolute shambles, isn't it? Suella Braverman's policy isn't going to work. 169,000 is how much it could cost per person, and from what I've read, Patrick, that's 60 grand or so more than if they were dealt with in a different way. Now, I put £169,000 into my calculator and I times it by roughly how many people arrived across the channel last year, and that figure, which is money that the British taxpayer will pay, was too big for my calculator. Whichever way you look at this, it is a disaster. The government wants to look strong because it's basically its only hope of coming anywhere close to winning the next election, but it hasn't thought this through. The costs are catastrophic. What it needs to be doing is dealing with this sensibly and responsibly. Drop the ridiculous rhetoric about being invaded by dinghies. Talk to the French. Make sure that these people don't start coming in the first place. The idea that the Rwanda scheme, which everyone knows is going to fail, is going to act as a deterrent is utter nonsense.
Well, that's it. Well, that's a good point, Matthew, for me to lob it back over to Henry, who we can tell is itching to get involved. But Henry, what the government are saying is, if Rwanda deters 37% of the channel crossings that we have at this current rate, then it will basically break even. Do you think it will?
Well, look, I'm mathematically pretty stupid, Patrick, but yeah, probably. I have no reason to doubt that. But I don't believe it's going to deter that many people. I simply don't believe that's going to happen. People smugglers market their services, and they will find naive, ignorant people who don't know any better who will come across. And the thing is, that's what we've got to disrupt. We've got to stop these people coming in the first place. I don't think that sort of deterrent is going to work as effectively as, I mean, you've heard me argue about it before, I think, Patrick, and it's a contentious issue, but I think we should have a national ID card. I think there are only 6 countries in the world that don't. Now, you know, you could talk about the expense there. There was a previous consultation on a national ID card, and I think it came to 93 billion about 20 years ago. Well, that was ridiculous because of the way the government wanted to do it. I mean, that's a different discussion. Okay. But if we had that, then I think I am convinced through my work in dealing with illegal immigration that a lot of the motivation is that people can work off-grid. They can do their own thing. We can't track them. Whereas you go to Belgium, you go to France, you go to Germany, you go to Canada, you go to the United States. They're simply not able to do it in that way.
All right, I understand that. Matthew, you know what? Look, no matter which way we dress it up, the costs are massive, OK? But I think if it was put to a public vote and they were asked whether or not they would rather that 169 grand per person went on shipping someone to Rwanda or flying them there, or building them a house, making sure they could send their kids to a school or take up a place at a GP practice in this country or whatever, they would fly them to Rwanda, Matthew.
Let me put it another way, Patrick. First of all, I think that the great British public are much more compassionate and pro-asylum seekers, genuine asylum seekers, than you give them credit for. But secondly, put it another way, instead of all these people, tens of thousands of people languishing on these waiting lists, stuck in hotels, being paid £7 an hour, we can have an argument about £7 a week. We can have an argument, Patrick, about what sort of accommodation they're being housed in. And the Suella Braverman boat policy seems to be blown out of the water already earlier this week. The boat wasn't even ready. Imagine if these people went to work. Imagine if these people started contributing to the society as they are desperate to do, rather than, as the right-wing narrative is, they're going to be trying to scrimp it off the state. The reality is a lot of these people want to come here, want to create a better life, want to be part of our society. That's what our society is currently partly built on. If we change the narrative, we will be so much better off. And let me say this one other thing, Patrick, because I think this is important. I am not in favour of people coming across in those boats. They are death traps. I want to stop that. I would prefer there to be, far prefer there to be, proper means for people to get here who really want to get here. We have to try and stop the boats. The way to deal with that is to have good relationships with other European countries,
the thing, isn't it?
most pertinently with France.
Can I come in? The fact is that, sadly, these people don't want to come here to work to benefit the UK economy. They are economic migrants who are sending money back home. That's point number one. Point number two, Patrick, in relation to the people who are already here, We've got to speed up the process of the processing of them. If we need to, let's draft in the reserve forces. Let's train them up. Let's get this done.
That's a point of agreement.
But we have to deal with the flow. We have to stop the flow. Otherwise, the cost is just going to grow.
OK, look, both of you, thank you very much. Good stuff, chaps. OK, Henry Bolton there, of course, who is a security and border control expert, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen. Right, OK, loads more on this story on our website. I've been asking you whether or not you think it's value for money. Loads of you have been getting in touch. I would hate to see the cost of keeping their expanding family here. That's from Jacqueline, gbviews at gbnews.com, or on our website, gbnews.com, the fastest growing national news website in the country. You can add that to your awards as well, which we've just won. Have that. Anyway, we've got the best analysis, big opinion, and the latest breaking news. Loads more still to come between now and 6 o'clock. The BBC's best-known presenters, apparently, have claimed that the corporation only wants to feature working-class people if they're miserable. And there's just one day to go until I dance on stage with a group of male strippers. Oh, grief, the clip's back. It's me doing my rehearsal this morning. Now it's your headlines with... Stop the clip, it's headlines with Polly. Oh...
Patrick, thank you. Well, we start this news headline section with the inquest into Nicola Bulley's death, which has concluded today. The mother of two died from accidental drowning. Senior coroner Dr James Aidley told the inquest today that Nicola Bulley had fallen into the cold water and given no indication of any intention to take her own life. Miss Bulley disappeared in January whilst walking her dog along the River Wyre, and her body was found 3 weeks later after an extensive search. Lancashire Police says it hopes the coroner's findings will put an end to the ill-informed speculation which has been so damaging to Nicky's family. And the former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has finished giving evidence to the COVID-19 inquiry, saying nothing could bring back those who died. He added that earlier intervention would be needed in future to stop another pandemic claiming so many lives. He said the system for running adult social care was flawed and in nowhere near good enough shape to cope when the pandemic hit in 2020. Hospital consultants in England are to walk out next month after voting in favour of industrial action in a dispute over pay. More than 24,000 members of the British Medical Association voted in favour of striking. That's 86% on a turnout of 71%. It said that unless the government makes a credible offer, members will strike on July the 20th and 21st, just days after union doctors are on their 5-day strike. And in the United States, the prison guards charged with keeping safe the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein have been blamed for a series of failures in the lead-up to his suicide. The 66-year-old killed himself while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. A new report by Inspector General Michael Horowitz singled out 13 prison staff for misconduct and dereliction of their duties. And in happier news today, GB News has picked up a couple of Trick Awards. GB News Breakfast won Multi-Channel News Programme of the Year, much to the delight of Stephen Dixon and Ellie Costello. And Nigel Farage has won News Presenter of the Year. Congratulations to them. More on all those stories, head to our website, gbnews.com.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
A quick look at the markets. The pound will buy you $1.2752 and €1.1630 euros. The price of gold is £1,501.06 for an ounce, and the FTSE 100 has closed the day at 7,461 points.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News, investments that matter.
Well, you're going to love this. Should the RNLI wade out of woke waters and stick to their day job of ferrying cross-channel migrants? The RNLI has ordered its staff at a lifeboat station in East Sussex to attend diversity and inclusivity training. What can be more diverse and inclusive than going out into the Channel, helping people who are in small dinghies trying to enter this country illegally and then bringing them ashore? I mean, that surely has to be about as diverse and inclusive as it could possibly get. But a damning internal report alleged that female volunteers are barred from missions by the old crew, and they have to stay on shore instead. The report also discusses racism, detailing that people of colour are not given sufficient opportunities to volunteer, apparently. Joining me now is the head of comment at The Express, the wonderful Paul Baldwin. Paul.
Hi, Patrick.
Thank you very much. What do you make of this report that the RNLI apparently has got an alpha male, racist, misogynistic, why not homophobic as well, culture?
Well, when I first came across this story earlier on, Pat, the first day I had visions of some guy kind of who'd fallen off his lilo somewhere up in Blackpool, and the RNLI racing out to save him. And, you know, him saying, no, hang on, before you save me, I need to know your stance on the ongoing trans debate. And it kind of, the whole thing is it's insane. I mean, it seems to me that, you know, if you this whole thing about the alpha male, if I'm drowning, I want a boat packed with alpha males. Thanks very much. That's exactly who I want rescuing me. And what I really felt about the report, just going through it, it seems to have been written through a very woke prism. And as I say, alpha male is being conflated with something to be despised or something contemptible. And it's just, it feels absolutely wrong. It feels like it's coming from a particular political point of view.
But these are also...
better for, good for the RNLI.
No, absolutely. These are also people who, when they're not in the middle of the channel, you know, helping to ferry people here for a better life, Paul, they are up to their eyeballs in saving lives in the most extreme conditions you can possibly imagine. I mean, the last thing we need to do here is to be introducing some kind of diversity or gender quota. If ever there was a job, this and the military, where you just need the best people for the job, this has to be it, surely.
There are not many heroes left in the world, Patrick, and I think anybody who puts himself in a tiny boat in terrible conditions and goes out and saves the life of somebody they don't know, they're going in the hero box for me, for sure. But I think what the problem here is this whole notion of diversity training. It's a management trick. It's a legal kind of get out. This didn't need diversity training. If we don't really know what went on, but if something a bit unsavoury did go on, what it needed was management. A manager needed to go and say, lads, this is not acceptable. This is the way forward, right? And it was self-contained. It would never get in. It would never be a report. It would never get in anybody's newspaper. It would be dealt with, managed. But what diversity training does is give the bosses in pool a legal get-out clause. It's a bottom-covering exercise. Nothing more, because then they can say, if something does happen, they can say, well, we've did everything we could. We've given them diversity training, which is a pointless exercise.
I've got a solution here, right, which might kill two birds with one stone. So when the RNLI goes out into the channel, they can show them recent diversity and inclusion training by throwing a rainbow flag at some of the boats that are trying to come across the channel. And maybe there could be a meeting of, in some cases, two conflicting cultures, and that might help to reduce the numbers of the boats as well.
Well, it's funny you should mention the rainbow flag, because I was just doing a bit of homework for the coming on here. And a few weeks ago, a gay lifeboat man, and I'll just read you what he said because it was really interesting and went completely against what we've been reading today. So he's a guy called, what's he called? Bear with me.
That's all right. We'll name him afterwards, don't worry. We can
Brad Johnson, right?
Oh, there you go.
And he wrote this. I think this is really. I've been truly overwhelmed by love and acceptance from all members of the crew, but it's one of the oldest who has been one of the most supportive. He told me at the start, if anything offended me, to let him know, and he would make sure it stopped. And that just does not chime at all with what we've been told today, right?
No.
I mean, that's at Skegness. The offending RNLI station was Hastings. But it just... This idea that, you know, lifeboat men are this kind of 1970s Sweeney type, you know, that's... I've got a mate who's a lifeboat man, and he's not that. He's absolutely not that.
But it just chimes in again today with another shocking report, which is this cricket report as well. Anyone who's ever played grassroots cricket, just at local club level, will absolutely 100% know that there is just not this culture of, endemic, systemic racism. I mean, that would come as a massive shock to the all British Pakistani, all British Indian and all British Bangladeshi clubs that are playing in leagues right across the country right now. But, Paul, we're going to have to leave it there, my good man. Look, thank you very much. Always a pleasure, always a pleasure. Right, Paul Baldwin there, who is indeed the head of comments at The Express. Make sure you check him out online, check his work out at The Express when you're not reading GBNews' website, of course. Now, just over 24 hours to go until I get my kit off and dance on stage with a group of male strippers. Not for the fun of it, believe it or not. No, it's for the mental health charity Mind. Stay tuned. The cringe is strong with this one. I had my final rehearsal today. We've got footage of it. It's not great, but please donate. JustGiving.com/fundraising/challenge Christys. Let's save some lives. Patrick Christys on GB News, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, OK, so one of the BBC's best-known presenters says the BBC underrepresents and underestimates working-class people. Melvyn Bragg thinks the Beeb only wants to feature working-class people in the arts if they're miserable. Joining me now is former BBC radio presenter Danny Kelly. Danny, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show. I tell you what was fascinating. I'm becoming increasingly convinced that the likes of the BBC don't actually like people in general. They can't possibly have them. They can't possibly have them voting on things. If you just saw the reaction to Nigel Farage's and our breakfast show's Trick Award victory, I mean, good grief, you'd think that they hated the British public. But talk to me about this. Do you think that the BBC just cannot understand what the working class is like? Are we all just like these kind of young Oliver Twist figures who, you know, we have one digestive biscuit a day, we look at it for breakfast, we look at it for lunch, and then we scoff it all down for dinner?
The problem with the BBC, Patrick, and I'm coming from a regional broadcasting perspective when I was a radio presenter for 15, 16 odd years in Birmingham. The problem with the BBC is that management, and I can only speak from my own experience, management typically are anything but working class. They're very middle class, they're highly educated. They have very open and liberal views, and as far as our typical working class audience, we used to have a working class audience as a target. That went in 2017, 2018. We even had names for them and photographs. The BBC printed photographs of a 55-year-old Sue and a 55-year-old Dave. And by the way, Patrick, they were both white. Can you imagine the BBC now saying they exclusively target white people? Executives would be fainting in Wogan House. And the problem is that if you are a white working class individual, you have no natural connection with the middle class management. Now, the radio presenters typically did have a connection with the audience, and that was incredibly important. But it's the lack of, I dare say what they should do as part of any sort of interview process. They should ship these middle class liberal managers. They should make them have a couple of pints at a working man's club in Coventry or Birmingham City Centre, just to see how these oiks actually live. There's nothing wrong with being working class. There's nothing wrong with being white. But the problem, again, I remind you, is that the audience were always treated as, oof, they're a bit Brexity, they're a bit grubby, and by proxy, they're swivel-eyed racists. And unfortunately, that does come out now. Melvyn Bragg was talking about television, so you're depicted, if you're white and working class, you're depicted as some sort of bum and down and out on television. And I think that's an attitude endemic within management.
It's not actually hard to relate to people if you just bother to understand them. Or, crucially, Danny, you just live in the real world and meet enough of them. I mean, it's not hard. I mean, the idea that at the BBC they spend however much on taxpayers' money for these big brainstorming, how do we connect with the common man and woman on the street? Well, I don't know, Horatio, but I was talking to some of my friends down the Lawn Tennis Club, and they were saying that they're all just oiks. I mean, what's going on?
That's incredibly true, and it's natural. No matter how impartial and neutral a manager will tell you he or she is, it's natural, it's human nature for that partisanship to actually seep out on air. And yes, there is absolutely nothing wrong with being working class. And Melvyn Bragg actually introduces the skin colour white to the conversation as well, because if you're working class and brown, the BBC love you. If you're working class and black, the BBC are in love with you. And that's the massive difference. They pray at the altar of diversity, and they have shunned the working man and woman.
And so do you think that they, well, what Melvyn Bragg was saying, which is about them portraying the working class kind of white man as miserable, down and out, gritty? I would also say that there is a huge amount of pride in working class people, a huge amount of pride, and that money is by no means everything whatsoever. You know, there's a lot of culture there. There is a lot of community there. And by portraying people as being, you know, miserable, gritty, struggling to get by, they've got all of these issues that they need to overcome and they need to let go. It's actually quite offensive.
It is very offensive. And yes, you know, you have fewer worries in life if you've got a couple of quid, and if you're working class and skint, then obviously you have those financial worries. But the great thing, I'm a Scouser by birth, and the great thing about the city of Liverpool and the great thing about the city of Birmingham, where I plied my trade for nearly 20 years, is the fact that normal working class people, no matter what colour skin you were born with, are great salt of the earth people. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with being skint and working class. No. Nothing wrong with it at all.
No, look, Danny, thank you. I could talk to you all day. Unfortunately, you're not miserable enough. So we're going to have to get you off, I'm afraid. But next time, just please come on and be utterly miserable. Danny Kelly there is a former BBC radio presenter. Reacting to that story, one of the BBC's top stars. They said they don't understand the working class and that they think they've all got to be miserable. Well, there we go. Now, OK, here we go. Strap yourselves in. It is tea time. Stop eating. Otherwise, you're about to see your dinner again, from what I'm about to show you now. It's just over 24 hours to go until my date with Destiny. Yes, More than a year after I promised to perform with a group of male strippers, I'm finally getting around to actually doing it. More than 1,000 people will be packed in to the Churchill Theatre in Bromley in Kent to watch me strut my stuff with the Dream Boys. I will be doing 3 routines, including a solo. I met up with the guys just a few hours ago this morning for one final rehearsal. It wasn't a full dress rehearsal, as you can see there. I'm not in my costume for the evening. It will, I can reveal, be officer and a gentleman themed. Yes, that's right. And I was practicing some of my routine. Watch out, ladies. Yeah, there we go. I am not doing it for the fun of it. I am doing it for charity. And you will have also seen yesterday that I put myself through one of the most painful experiences possible. I got my chest waxed. It hurt a lot, a lot. Check this out. Do you do many men?
Yes.
Oh, OK.
Okay. Just to let me know how is temperature.
Oh, it's hot. Nice. Good.
Yeah. Initially you will feel hot.
Oh! You know, you do it already. OK. Oh, wow.
Okay.
OK, that's enough of that. Yes, I don't like the way that that lady there was enjoying it so much. Anyway, I am doing this to raise money for the mental health charity Mind. I'm delighted to say that you have now raised almost £73,000. Thank you so much. You can donate justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christys. That's justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christys. That money will go directly to helping people who are in an urgent mental health crisis and need some form of intervention. It literally will save lives. So thank you very much, everybody who has donated. You're running out of time to donate because tomorrow I will indeed be on stage with the Dream Boys. Michelle Dewberry joins me in the studio.
Once you've been there and done this, I can start looking at you normally again.
I know.
I see you, I look at you all like this, and then I'm seeing you there, all your bits and pieces out, whipping yourself with belts. It's all a bit peculiar for work colleagues, I've got to say.
No, I fully agree with you. No,
I think you're doing great. I was very taken aback when I did see those images of you, Patrick.
Thank you very much.
Your befores and your afters. In all seriousness, I do think you're doing remarkable things.
Thank
you. For you.
Well, thank you very much. It is genuinely all for a good cause, even if it, watching that video doesn't look like it. But there we go. So you were at the Trick Awards today.
Oh, it was delicious. I'm saying that as I'm looking at you, popping your buttons. That I've moved on from you. I'm now talking about Trick. I'm not talking about you getting your clothes off. Yeah. It was delicious. It was this room of like about 1,000 odd people. Oh, the who's who of the media, all the famous people, the industry. Oh, they didn't like it. I can tell you, Patrick. When we won, they did not like it. When Nigel Farage took to the stage, it was so good. If you listen carefully, you will hear a very loud, screeching northern individual in the background of his speech trying to outdo the hecklers.
Was that you?
Single-handedly whistling, shouting. That was me, yes.
Brilliant stuff.
I was having none of it.
Isn't it fascinating, right? You open a vote up to the public.
Oh, brilliant.
We win 2 awards.
Brilliant.
The establishment media that are there boo it. It's almost like they hate the public, isn't it?
I was on such a high because, ultimately, we're not like this kind of, we're not owned by this company that however many decades ago had this newspaper. We're not like that. We're just grassroots for the people. Without you people, we're absolutely nothing. So of all the awards to win, it was fantastic. I'm really happy.
Very quickly, what's on the agenda?
And I didn't even win an award, by the way.
Not this time.
Yeah, not this time. Get your votes in for me.
Right, very quickly, what award-winning content is coming up?
I've got loads coming up. Everything. Pensions, COVID, the state of our military, loads of stuff.
All right, lovely stuff. Right, thank you very much, everybody. I'll be back again tomorrow. Please donate, justgiving.com/fundraising/Challenge Christys for the charity Mind. Tomorrow I'll get my kit off on stage with the Dream Boys. Peace out.
Good afternoon. Alex Deegan here with your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Lots of clouds around today. Outbreaks of rain across a good chunk of the country, but not much in the south. Staying largely dry here as high pressure tries to hold on, but it's not winning out. This low pressure system is dominating, and these weather fronts have been bringing the thickening cloud and the outbreaks of rain for many through the day, and that will continue well into the evening over much of Scotland, northern England as well. It may turn a bit drier over North Wales and for a time across Northern Ireland. Not
much rain in the south, but staying pretty cloudy. And even further north, that rain tends to head out into the North Sea, so most places become dry overnight. It's quite warm, quite humid, quite misty and murky around the coast. Temperatures staying up at 16 or 17 degrees Celsius, so it won't be a chilly start to Wednesday. Mostly cloudy, but mostly dry start. Some rain and drizzle over the mountains of Wales and hills of northern England, southern Scotland. But there is more rain to come, initially into Northern Ireland, then spreading into parts of southern Scotland. Some brighter colours there, some heavier bursts of rain likely. 1 or 2 showers breaking out across England and Wales, but much of the south and east of England staying dry. Really quite warm and humid, quite a sticky feel, even though it won't be particularly sunny. Temperatures getting up to 25, maybe 26 Celsius. It will start to turn fresher as this rain pulls away from the northwest, but that rain could turn pretty heavy. Some thunderstorms possible for a time over northern England, eastern Scotland and the Midlands during Wednesday evening, before again heading out into the North Sea. Then we could see some rain though, some perhaps welcome rain across East Anglia and the southeast during Thursday morning. Some uncertainty about when that will clear away, but it could be a bit of a wet morning here certainly, and it may linger into the afternoon across the far east. Elsewhere, most places on Thursday, a bright kind of day with just a sprinkling of showers and a much fresher feel. That humidity will drop once more with temperatures back in the high teens, low 20s.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in their home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christys, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken.